Shalom, family. Shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings. Godspeed to everybody. We'll let people get into the room. Happy Sabbath to everyone. Hopefully, you guys having a very productive Sabbath, high holy day for the week. And family online. If you don't got a calendar or copy of the calendar, go ahead and go to our YouTube community tab, and then you can download a calendar there. You should be able to download the calendar there. You guys can be up on top of everything. The scriptures talk about, you're sealing the feast of the Lord. So it's very important to uphold these feast days. Shalom, Brother Chad. Brother Sam, what up? I ain't seen my Brother Sam in a minute. Shalom, King. Godspeed. Brother Chad, shalom, King. Shalom. Make sure y'all hit that like button when you come in. And share on your Facebook for me, man. Share on your Facebook because, like I said, YouTube is really giving us a hard time right now. I'm going to figure out a way around it. But while we go through it, make sure y'all, we're going to need the help and the push from the family. Don Israel, what about? Shalom, King. Shalom. How about Shunya Shabbat? What about? All praise. Salute to the family online. Appreciate y'all. Just make sure when you come in, tap in, hit that like button. Make sure you share on all the social medias, man. If you got a TikTok, share on there. You got a Facebook, share on there. Instagram, little snippets, whatever. Let's get this ministry push. Let a couple brothers and sisters get in before we get started. Take good notes today, family. There's gonna be a lot of information we go over today. Want to make sure y'all getting this information correctly. Brother Doc Hands, what up, Shalom. Godspeed to you. How y'all feeling, Israel? Y'all good? No, it's a long Sabbath. A long week. Thank God for the Sabbath.
Yep, for real.
Yeah, man. You had that rest from the plantation.
Man.
Yep. Sister Kim, shalom, family, shalom. Oh, praises, shalom, King. It's gonna be a good lesson tonight, family. Make sure y'all take notes. Elder gonna give a lot of good history, timelines going into these prophecies, man. Especially, with everything going on in the world today, you definitely want to pay attention to prophecy, as it say in Ecclesiastes. You need to be occupied in prophecy, week in and week out, especially with all the stuff going on. So we're gonna let a couple more people get in. 5-10 minute mark, we'll get started. He said you need them breakdowns. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's the time, man. We're out the doorsteps of the elders. And make sure y'all send me an email of what y'all want. Topics. Matter of fact, while y'all on the live right now, comment in the chat what y'all would like to see the elder go over. This is the time. The book of Ecclesiastes tell you to do that. Wear out the footsteps of the elder. So go ahead and comment in the chat below so we can just have some ideas and keep it fresh for y'all. What y'all want to go. You can always double back. Rata and the elder, they went over a lot of stuff previously. Let me share my screen real quick so I can show y'all how to get to that. I try to archive it for y'all. You know what I'm saying? Let me see before I share my screen. Hold on. Try to archive it for y'all so y'all could be able to access it very relatively easy. You know what I'm saying? So look, you go to the Believers of the Way page, right, on YouTube. And then it's going to have a couple different tabs. You're going to have home, video, shorts, live, playlist. You want to go to the playlist. So I got the playlist, and then I got the Elder Raim breakdowns. I got to upload some more, but these is like majority of the ones that he had. Him and Rata, they went over covering a lot of stuff. So you can just eat off of this. Basically for brothers and sisters that's not really in no camps and stuff like that, and you need some spiritual food, and you might have missed these lessons. Well, there go your Sabbath day lesson right there. Second half of the day, you can go ahead and gobble up on this food. It's a lot of content. 3-hour lessons, 2-hour lessons. You know what I'm saying? 2-hour lesson. More and more and more. They going into heavy stuff. So I'm gonna try to get that updated for all the new lessons. But y'all could definitely go on there and like I said, get your daily bread that you need, especially on the Shabbat when you ain't got nothing. You should be doing nothing anyways. All right, Elder, we're at the 7-minute mark. I'll go ahead and let you take the floor.
Con. So, first of all praises to the Most High Yahweh Shai. Appreciate, brothers for always extending the platform and breaking bread. Shalom, Israel. So, Daniel 7 and 8. I know we covered some of these in some of the lessons you mentioned. I know, we talked briefly. Simon, Memorial of Simon is coming up, and I think that this history and some of the prophecies that are in the Bible that deal with the Apocrypha history is important, because you have a lot of people that don't really say that the Apocrypha does not coincide with the Bible, is not canonical, as they would say, or it's not scripturally influenced. Well, that's a lie. The Apocrypha, we know, for example, Feast of Dedication, that we can only find that where? In the book of Maccabees, and we see in the New Testament that Christ and Israelites kept that feast. So they wouldn't have known of that feast had there not been a book called Maccabees, which we don't find in the popular published King James. We have to get to 1611 translation, and there's a lot of history as to why and how they end up taking the Apocrypha books out. But nonetheless, the books of the Apocrypha are a part of the scriptures. Excuse me. So we're going to get into it. One thing you're going to see throughout history is the children of Israel has always been afflicted by the nation that was in power. So here's a hint and here's a clue. If you want to find out where the children of Israel are, you find out what kingdom is in power and who is their chief people that's in bondage. Okay, that's what you have to look at. For example, we know we're here in America, right? Who are the chief people that are afflicted, that have been in bondage here in America? So-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, Native American Indians, right? So even when we go into history, you're going to see it's the same thing. Okay, the Most High always lets us know. Let's go to the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's get Ecclesiastes. And let's read chapter 1 and verse 9.
Across the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 9. It says, the things that have been, it is that which shall be.
You see that? The things that have been is that which shall be. So this is why the Bible is the living word, because we can read about something in Genesis and best believe it's still applicable today. You can never say, well, oh, I read the Bible and that's it. No, the Bible is constantly unfolding. The Bible is so multifaceted. You can read over and over, and guess what? Every time you read it, your understanding is going to elevate every single time. Okay. But the thing that has been is that which shall be. So the things that we read about, we're going to see that not too much changes from what happened. Okay. This is why we can always go back to the scriptures to apply it to our life, because it's always relevant. It's always dealing with today. Even though a lot of what we read in the thousands of years old is still applicable today. Okay, right. Read on.
And that which is done is that which shall be done.
That's right. So the things that we see that are written is what shall be done. That's called prophecy. All right, read.
And there is no new thing under the sun.
There is no new thing under the sun. So what Esau was doing back in the so-called Old Testament is exactly what he's doing right now. Israel was being rebellious in the Old Testament. Are they not being rebellious right now?
Without a doubt.
We were looking at the other nations. We're the chosen people of the Lord. But we're looking at the other nations trying to figure out, well, how can we get like them? Well, are we not doing that today?
Right. Still to this day.
And the nations then wanted to be like us. Are they not doing that today?
For sure.
You see what I'm saying? So there's nothing new under the sun, as the Most High is saying. See, that's what that right there is prophecy to let you know the Bible is real. So let me share a little bit of that. I want to go a little bit before we go into Daniel 7 and 8. I want to kind of go back to show you how one of our earlier captivities in Egypt is still the same thing they did then as what's happening right now. All right, let's go to the book of Exodus. To show you some prophecy and events that take place even now. So Exodus chapter 1, we're going to start at verse 1.
Book of Exodus chapter 1 from the top. Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already. Now,
we got to deal with that. So we read that when, Joseph, it said Joseph was in Egypt already, right? Remember, his brothers sold him. He was taken to Egypt. He was put in prison. And then through the Spirit of the Most High, he was elevated to be second in control under Pharaoh in all the land of Egypt for several years. Okay. So at that point, remember, Joseph called for his family and his brothers and their families, and they all came into Egypt because Joseph was prospering there. Okay. Right. And so they lived in Egypt at that point. They left the land of Canaan and they went to go and sojourn in Egypt. It said 70 souls. And it said, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Now we know that because we know the history when we read in Genesis that his brothers sold him and he went and thrived in Egypt, right? But there's more to that when we look from a prophetic standpoint, okay? Because one thing we have to understand is this. Let's read Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68. This is why I'm saying the Bible is multifaceted, that you can't pigeonhole yourself into a corner when reading a spiritual book. You have to see the layers that the Most High is showing you. It said that all the children of Israel went into Egypt as 70 souls, but Joseph was in Egypt already. Okay. Now we know historically that's true, but that's also a prophetic part too. Deuteronomy 28:68. So this is something that was said to the children of Israel. If we did not listen to the Most High's commandments, what is one of the curses that would happen to us?
This is the book of Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
Now, everybody knows this scripture. We use this. This is the first one of the first few scriptures that you read when you first started to hear the truth. We know for a fact that the nation that went on slave ships that was bought and sold were Negroes, were Latinos, were Native American Indians. We showed the history. I went into that when you read about the Gentiles, or the lesson we did maybe a year or so a little over a year ago, called Are the Native American Hispanics Israelites? Okay. pulled out the historical references, pulled out the archaeological records, went into the scriptures to show that after the Assyrian captivity, remember, some of the tribes did not go back into Israel. And then according to the book of Ezra, they began to migrate to the land called Arsareth, which scholars will tell you, and throughout the prophecy of the scriptures, that Arsareth is known as America. So you had what we call the 10 tribes that left Israel, was taken into Assyrian captivity. When they were released from Assyria, they didn't return back to Israel. They went to a further country where never mankind dwelt. And there they lived, and said they shall be there till the time of the end. Okay. So when we look at that, what country was supposed to come into power and be thriving where the Israelites will be at the time of the end? America. Okay. So when you go into the scriptures is going to answer the questions for you. But here's the thing. Why am I going and showing this? Is because when we deal with Egypt, it said Joseph was in Egypt already. Now we see that. Read that again from the top. Deuteronomy 28:68.
From the top, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I speak unto thee.
Yep.
Thou shalt see it no more again.
We would not see our land again as we knew it. Read.
And there,
hold on. And there, that Egypt, what would happen?
Ye shall be sold unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen,
slave men and slave women. Read.
And no man shall buy you. And
buy, we understand, means to redeem. Okay, because we know we were bought and sold. That we're living proof of that. Because you have some people say, well, it said you wouldn't even be bought and sold. Man, knock it off. Get out of here. Read to understand what the scriptures are saying. Okay, but now it said that the Israelites, for disobeying the Most High, will go into Egypt with ships and be bought and sold as bondmen and bondwomen. Now get Revelations 11:8. We can actually start at verse 7.
Book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 7.
Yep.
It says, and when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them.
And that's talking about the so-called white man, okay? The beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit that had 7 heads and 10 horns. That's also in Daniel. That's also in Revelations 12. That's also in Revelations 13 and Revelation 17, okay? We covered that extensively in the lessons past that Iran brought out, okay? So it says it says that they shall read that again, I'm sorry?
Come from the top. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them.
That's right. So it's talking about the so-called white man will make war with Israel, overcome them, and kill them. Now watch this. Read verse 8.
Verse 8, and their dead body shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt.
Which spiritually, their dead body shall lie in the streets of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. Now, why does it say spiritually? Because it's letting you know that it's not the ancient Egypt that we departed out with Moses at the time of the Passover. It's letting you know that the land that Israel will be taken to captive on ships will resemble the Egypt that was then. Okay, spiritual Egypt. It's also called spiritual Babylon. It's also called spiritual Sodom. What was Sodom known for? See, these are basic things. When we read the scriptures, we can see Sodom, they were known for what?
Homosexuality.
Homosexual activity, fornication, prostitution, murder, all the things. Now you look in America, what country is the capital of these activities? You understand? And now here it is. It said that their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of America. Well, look at the atrocities of the so-called Negro in America. Even to this day, 2024, look at the atrocities. Look at the police killings. Look at the drug epidemic. What about the Hispanics? What about the Native American Indian? What soil were millions of Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians killed and destroyed on? American soil. You understand? So that's why I said spiritual Sodom and Egypt. Those attributes that's attributed to those historical or ancient countries of the past are still here, but taking the form of a modern day society known as America. So now, remember it said that all the sons of Jacob that came into Egypt were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Now, guess what? Who was already in America when the so-called Negroes or the Southern Kingdom came to America?
Joseph, 10 tribes.
Joseph, which is known as what? The Northern Kingdom.
Yeah.
The kingdom of Ephraim. Ephraim was Joseph's son. So that, do you see how the Most High threw a prophecy right there in the beginning, although he referenced actual history? Because we do know that the sons went in with Joseph while he was ruling Egypt, and they dwelt there for over 400 years, right? But what the Most High is also showing us is that, look, there's more to that picture as you continue to read on. That's how prophecies unfolds itself. That's how you become more mindful in the scriptures to see how the Most High is showing you these things and awakening to you to a different or more in-depth understanding in the book of Genesis. We're reading about the Israelites being in America in Genesis, in the first book. You see what I'm saying? Although it's a historical event that it's referencing. Let's go back there. So I'm hoping that's making sense.
The book of Exodus.
Chapter 1 and verse 5.
Verse 5. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already.
Again, showing you that we know that Joseph, the brother of the 12 or the 11 sons was in Egypt, but it's also showing you that in that modern spiritual Egypt, when the southern kingdom came later, because remember, the northern kingdom departed first, and the southern kingdom, known as the kingdom of Judah, dwelt in Jerusalem still until 70 AD. And then what happened? When the Romans came in 70 AD, causing the Israelites that were there to flee into the areas of Europe, areas of Africa. They dwelt in Africa for over 1,500 years. And then what happened? You had the Africans, you had the Arabs, you had the so-called white man, the Dutch, the English. You see what I mean? The Muslims. We went into that lesson a few weeks ago. They did what? The Jews that were living in the western portion of Africa were gathered, sold, and that's how our transatlantic slave trade began. But guess what? When they were dropping these slaves off into the islands of the Caribbean, the South America, Central America, was it empty, or were there already people there wearing fringes, building pyramids like was built in ancient Egypt? Y'all see what's going on? Keeping laws or having a lot of Hebrew laws within their culture.
Facts.
You understand? But not only that, they also took a lot of the negativity and the idolatry and the evil that they did back in the Northern Kingdom. Blood sacrifice, sacrificing to idols, human sacrifice,
putting wrong people in the priesthood.
What'd you say?
Putting the wrong tribes in the priesthood, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And they were doing that amongst the Aztec culture, the Mayan culture, Inca culture. You see what I mean? The Toltec, and so on and so forth. So when we see that happening, for Joseph was in Egypt already, that's why they were already here. And guess what? All Israel got oppressed together under who? The so-called white man, as it was prophesied, be it the English, be it the Spanish, because who conquered the so-called Mexicans and the Spanish conquistadors? Who conquered the Indians? The English, the French. You see what's going on? Who invaded the Caribbean islands? Haiti and Jamaica and all those islands. Britain, France. You see what I mean? All who? The so-called white man, part of the beast, the 7 heads and 10 horns. So we see that Joseph being in Egypt already they came pretty much over here, built up kingdoms just like Joseph did back then.
Damn, that's crazy.
Y'all see that?
He already had it ready for us. It's like they already had it ready for us.
Exactly. Went into a land that he was a stranger in and started to rule it. It started to bring economics into Egypt. Hold that. Go to Psalms 105. So you got to see how deep the scriptures get. Don't never count out the scriptures. They never get old. They never get boring. It's always excelling, always moving. So Psalms 105, let's read verse 17.
Psalms 105, verse 17. He sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant.
You see that? Now let's look at the parallel. Said he sent a man before them, even Joseph. So when we say Joseph here, we're talking about actual Joseph, the son of Jacob, right? But in prophetic term, we're talking about who? Ephraim, the northern kingdom, who's also called Joseph, right? But now, what was Ephraim prior to them coming to America? They were sold as servants in the Syrian captivity. Y'all see that? Read on. Watch this.
Verse 18. Whose feet they hurt with feathers. He was laid in iron until the time that his word came. The word of the Lord tried him.
You see that? Watch this. Read.
The king sent and loosed him, even the rulers of the people, and let him go free.
Did not the northern kingdom, Joseph, Ephraim, didn't they not get freed from Assyria to go free? And then it said that they would not. When you read in the book of 2 Kings, the 17th chapter, it tells you that when they came back to see other nations living in their land while they were gone, they did not want to go back there. It said instead they went into a farther place where never mankind dwelt. That meant it could not have been anywhere in the Levant region, the Middle East, places up in Europe, Japheth, all that place was inhabited. But if coincidentally, we see a people that come to America that there's no record of anybody living here prior to their existence.
Right.
You see that? It said, and let him go free. Read on.
Verse 21. He made him Lord over his house and ruler of all his substance.
Who ruled America, modern day Egypt, prior to the white man's invasion? What kingdoms were here that were thriving?
Northern kingdom.
Exactly. The king and the kingdoms that I just mentioned, the Mayas, the Aztecs, and so on. Read on.
To bind his princes and his pleasure, and to teach his senators wisdom.
Well, who taught the so-called white man how to plant and survive in this land?
Our people.
You see what I'm saying? Then what happened? You have that they get massacred and murdered, and now you have what's known as Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we taught them, just like Joseph taught the Egyptians how to save during the time of famine or during the time of plenty so that they could survive when the famine came. Who taught them? Who taught the so-called white man how to survive in this land?
We did.
When hard times and the weather and those things and those harsh conditions occur, who showed him how to survive? Who had the accurate calendar? Who had weapons? Who had a government and systems of judges and things set up in this culture prior to the invasion of the so-called white man?
It was all
So
us.
don't get fooled by TV where they just show them running around in a loincloth and a bone or some type of tattoos and body markings and things like that. Although that part of it, what did happen, they also have a lot of wisdom and a lot of things that were being done. You understand? Read on.
Verse 23. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham.
You see that? So going back to what was said in Exodus, but we also see the parallel of the same thing. You see what I'm saying? So all Israel came into the land of America and began to be what? Was oppressed. You see? So you had that the northern kingdom came over first, they thrived, and then they were brought into bondage. The southern kingdom was still in Judea, thriving until they were subdued, later brought to America. Now they're all on the soil serving bondage together, as the scripture would say. Go to Jeremiah.
And Brother Mark, or Magan, write these precepts down, huh? Come on, bro. You don't need nobody to do it in the chat. You write them down yourself. Get your pen out, your paper, and write them down, huh? I'm expecting a little bit more from you. You've been around for a long time. We ain't gonna handicap you. Write these precepts down, King. You don't need no moderator. Write them down yourself. Oh yeah, Jeremiah what?
50:33.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 33.
Now remember, it said Joseph came first, which we know is the northern kingdom or the kingdom of Joseph or Ephraim. Then the brothers came and joined up in America afterwards, just like back in Exodus. Okay. So then, but when they all came together, what happened? Read.
Verse 33, thus says the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together.
You see that? So the children of Israel, meaning the northern kingdom, and the children of Judah were oppressed together. Now, here's another thing of how you look at prophecy. Somebody might say, well, that's talking about in the time of Jeremiah. Yeah, they were all oppressed together. That's not true, because Jeremiah lived during the time of Babylon. The northern kingdom did not go into captivity with Israel, with the tribe, with the children of the southern kingdom during the time of Babylon. You understand? Here's another fact. The only time all Israel was together in bondage at the same time was at the last ancient Egypt. So now we see the parallel again. We see ancient Egypt was the last time all the 12 tribes were in the same land in bondage.
Right.
Then after that, there were captivities, but they were always a tribe here, a tribe there. Then you had the northern kingdom went into Assyria. They got released. Then you had the southern kingdom went into Babylon. By the time that happened, the 10 tribes had already migrated to this area, to the Americas. You see? And then from there, they got afflicted by the Persians and got afflicted by the Greeks, which we're going to go into, to the Romans, up to 70 AD, where they fled in Africa. Then later came to America, which we just read is spiritual Egypt, to where they're all oppressed together. Y'all see that? So this is how the scriptures are showing you. So no, you can't go in and say that's talking about then. No, at the time of Jeremiah, that was a prophecy. Although it says oppressed in the past tense, it's still letting you know that that's something that's going to happen later, because they did not all go into captivity during the time of Jeremiah, nor during the time of Isaiah, nor during the time of Joel, nor during the time of the New Testament, or only later on in the future as we continue to read on. Okay, read on.
They were oppressed together. Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captive held them fast. They refused to let them go.
You see that? Well, here's another fact. They refused to let them go. Have they let us go? We're still here. We're still here. But here's the thing. People have the weird idea to say, well, we're not in chains, but yes, we are, because of the fact that, one, our nationality and culture has been taken from us. So we have no idea where we even come from or what we're to do. How can you call yourself free when you're enslaved by another man's ideology? And you think you're him? If you have a dog trying to be a cat, acting like a cat, meowing instead of barking, you're going to say that damn dog is crazy. Why is it meowing?
Right.
When it should be barking. Or sound like a chicken and clucking and all of this. Here's a dog clucking.
Right. You
got a pit bull clucking. Really?
Don't look right. You don't look right.
Reader be like, oh, no, that's something wrong with that one. So if you're an Israelite or you're a Negro Hispanic and you're trying to be another nation that you're not, you're clucking. So how are we free?
That's a good one. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Teaching cats how to use the toilet and flush the toilet and stuff. He's still a damn animal. Relax. But this is what happens. So we get the idea because things have changed and we figure, oh, it's not as bad. But no, your whole identity has been taken from you.
Right.
Your language gone. The clothing you're supposed to wear gone. Language gone. Land gone. Your laws and commandments gone. So what happens? We fragment a bunch of other people's cultures together to try to find something that we're missing. That's not free. That's not freedom at all. So they held them captive and they refused to let them go. So we're still here. So let's go back to Exodus. Excuse me. So Exodus 1. So, just kind of bringing that out a little bit to show that parallel of the ancient Egypt compared to this modern day Egypt, or spiritual Egypt, as the scriptures call it. So let's pick up at so Joseph was in Egypt already. Let's read verse 6.
Verse 6. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation.
Go ahead.
And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiply and wax exceedingly mighty.
So now that's what began to happen, even on this soil. You see what I'm saying? That's why you had all these fights, the Indian Wars. That's why you had all the Coromantee and the Maroons, all these wars that was going on in Jamaica and Haiti and all these different rebellions, because they were fighting. They didn't want to go down like that. They didn't just bend over and say, take us. No, they fought back. They fought back as much as they could until the Most High took the power as he prophesied. He said, what was one of the curses? Thou shalt go out one way against thy enemies and flee 7 ways before them. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. Do y'all see that? So we were mighty and we were strong. You got to look at these empires. If you ever had a chance to go into the Yucatan, into these areas of Mexico, and look at these ruins of these mighty kingdoms that was there, and the warrior and all the power that they had, but then got subdued by a pale man that's weak, that lets you know the power, the Most High took our power from us. Go ahead.
Verse 7. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty.
Yeah.
And the land was filled with them.
There you go. See, that the same thing that was happening here. Read on. Now watch this. Watch what happens.
Now there arose a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
So now, as they say, the changing of the guard happened when Egypt began to have new dynasties and new pharaohs came up. They chose not to recognize the goodness and the greatness that Joseph contributed to Egypt. That's what it means when it says he knew not Joseph. Meaning he chose not to recognize the greatness that, remember, Joseph kept Egypt from falling.
Right.
By showing them the economic prowess that they utilized during those 7 years of goodness and 7 years of famine. That wasn't just something like, we just had them get corn. And no, he was showing them supply and demand. That was the stock market back then. If you corner the stocks and you gather all the corn during the time when everything is coming up and you take it, well, guess what? When it's no longer there, the demand goes up. You could charge whatever you want. Well, don't they do that on Wall Street?
Exactly. That's exactly what they do.
Isn't that why people invest? Isn't that why people play the stock markets? Because they want to buy in to something and hopefully that the value of it increases?
Right.
Well, guess what? Your forefather Joseph already knew that. And guess what? He was doing it here in America too. You see?
Right.
But when these new leaders came up, they chose to say, no, you know what? We're not going to do it. We'll take their information and we'll take what's good, but we're going to look to destroy them.
Right.
And that's what they began to do. Read on.
Verse 9. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
Now, that's a fact. It said the children of Israel are more than mighty. Even right now in America, we're more and mightier than them. Just look at the level of skill of what we do compared to what the nations do. We jump higher, we run faster, we dominate all the sports, we dominate anything that is of artistry, music, all within the 12 tribes. Even warfare, we dominated. And the only reason why we're not able to stand now is because we disunified ourselves due to our infighting and disobeying the laws of the Most High, and we were cursed for doing so. But all in all, you get the Negroes, the Native American Indians, these are the chief, fiercest warriors on the planet, and you put them all together on the same side, who could stand before them? Who could stand before them? They're still hoping for a great white hype or the great white hope in boxing, aren't they?
Yeah, they've been waiting on that for a long time.
They're still waiting it. And you got so-called Negroes, Hispanics doing it effortless, just without effort. Just easy. And that's natural ability. That's showing you what the power of the Most High is pumping through them.
Salakia, if we remove Negroes and Hispanics from boxing, there will be no boxing. There will be no boxing. Remove us from boxing, there will be no more boxing.
Check it out. Wouldn't be soccer, baseball, football, basketball for sure. You see what I'm saying? It's like, this is what I'm saying, but you look at the majority of talent, just raw talent. That's what the children of Israel. But here's what the nations are saying now. It said that they start to look up and say they're more and mightier than us. They're stronger. They're beating us at everything. If we keep leaving them to do this, they'll take us over. If we let them unify, they can take us over and they can defeat us. Read on.
Come, let us deal with them wisely.
Look at that.
Lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there fall out of war, they join also our enemies and fight against us.
You see that? Because here, yeah, because here the Egyptians, remember, the Egyptians were also at war with other nations too. And remember the saying, an enemy to my enemy is my friend.
Right.
You see what I mean? So here it is. If we joined up with another nation that's already enemies to the Egyptians, then what's going to happen? It's over for them. It's over. You see what I'm saying? So now they said, let us deal wisely with them. So now they're coming out with the tactics, the same thing they're doing right now. And notice in every captivity, they did the same thing.
Right.
Here it is, it's the Egyptians. Then we're going to go into the time when it was the Babylonians. Then it was the Persians. Then it was the Greeks. Then the Romans, and then even extended to America. The same thing. They always targeted the children of Israel. A lot of history that we see, world history, is centralized around the children of Israel.
Right.
And that's a fact. So it said, let them deal wisely with them. Read on.
Verse 11, therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens.
See that? So now here comes the slave masters. Here comes your supervisors to afflict them. So when we look at the burdens and things that they were doing, picking cotton in these crops, in these fields, working for free, working for nothing, dying, heat stroke, disease, poverty, drugs. You notice that all of this stuff they target into the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians into their land. That's why the ghettos, the projects, that's why the epidemic is so strong. But then when you look at the Indians, look at the reservations, it's the same situation. Those are this open projects. Then you look at the Hispanics, they go look at the poverty. Look at what's known as the slums in Brazil, South America, Central America, all throughout Costa Rica, in these areas. Look at what's known as the slums of poverty. You haven't seen poverty until you go to those countries.
Yeah, it looked terrible over there. Huh?
Man, have a makeshift house is literally like cardboard or a piece of wood. The roof is like an ironing board. I mean, this is the living conditions of our people. But what happens, as long as they understood that if we afflict them, then what happens? Their power starts to diminish. Let us deal wisely, but it's not finished. Read on.
Therefore, they did set taskmasters over them, taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens.
Yeah.
And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities.
Look at that. So even then, you had the Israelites building for Pharaoh treasure cities like Python and Ramesses, pyramids, these great palaces that the Egyptians had that people go and take tours of. We was building a lot of that stuff.
Right.
We was building a lot of those pyramids. So it's no coincidence that you see the same pyramids in South America. Because remember, Joseph was there already.
Right.
You see him in Central America. You see what I mean? You see him in Israel. It tells you that in Maccabees that Israel built. We had pyramids in Israel. So how is it that all of these, and it's almost the same architecture? You understand?
That's what's crazy.
See what I'm saying? If you look at it and look at how they were set up, I mean, it was incredible. It's like if you look at the pyramid of Chichen Itza, right? It's actually a calendar. It's like a observatory, so to speak. Every hour of the day or the seasons of the year, it shows a certain reflection on the steps or the side of the pyramid, and it lets you know what month it is. Damn. How did they know to make these things at the right angle, the right size to be able to reflect the sun's rotation to know what summer it is so that they can understand when they should plant and when they should start to sow? You see what I'm saying?
Well, they had the prophecy say. in the
What's
book.
that?
I said, well, Issachar and them had that skill, as they say in the prophecy.
Absolutely. You see what I'm saying? So, but these are things that we can't ignore, and we have to really look at. And this is why I said, let us deal wisely with them. More and mightier. That is not just doesn't mean physically stronger. That means intellectually stronger. Because remember, who taught them how to survive and deal in this land? And then they came in over and abused it, slaughtered our people, took advantage, raped, pillaged, murdered, stole, and that's how they thrive today. So we built things up. Now, even take it today. Who are the people you see on these construction sites doing the labor?
Our people.
You see what I mean? Who's your roofers? Who's your painters and your window wipers that's up there risking their lives on these side of these 100-story buildings cleaning windows?
Northern Kingdom primarily, though.
You see what I'm saying? So and this is what they were doing. This says afflict them with their burdens. Little to no money, cost of living overextends what they're getting paid. It's the same situation. Ancient Egypt to modern Egypt. Read on.
Verse 12. But the more they afflict them, the more they multiplied and grew.
But now, same facts right now. The more, look at all the slavery we went through. Millions of Native American Indians. We're not talking about 1 or 2 million. We're talking about 70 million. 100 million Negro. But we hear like sand, the sand of the sea.
Right.
And that's what's tripping them out. It's like, damn, as much as we kill them, they keep on multiplying.
Right.
How can that happen? We slaughtered millions of them. We invaded and took down millions of Aztecs and many Mayans, many of the Toltec, many of the Bowickman Indians. We destroyed millions of them, but they still keep coming back as though they were not gone. That's what's puzzling them now. That's why they keep trying to figure out how can we modernize and advance slavery to a different point to where we can keep them suppressed, because somehow they keep picking a lock. They keep getting out of it. You had that dog and you locked up and put a brick and everything, but somehow you keep getting out and you're trying to figure out. Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is what was going on with Egypt. Read on.
And they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
See that? This is what makes them. He said grieved. This is meaning anger, perplexed. Like, man, what can we do to stop them? They keep excelling. Notice, anytime they kick us out, they won't let us in. They didn't let us in the major league. So, we found them Negro League. And then what did they do? Shit, they better than us. We need to go get some of them. You see how it works? Oh, they didn't want us to play the music that they were playing. So, we founded blues and funk and jazz and all this other stuff. Now, guess what? Look who they want to come and get. Now they want to come and take from it and bleed us and act as though they found it. Same thing with rap. They didn't want no parts of it in the beginning, right? Now look at them.
All in
it. All in it. This has been the story of Israel from the beginning. That's why the Most High said, we are a special people above all nations that are upon the face of the earth. He didn't say that for nothing. That's a fact. These nations want to be like us. They want our skin. They want our texture. They want our muscle. They want our body physical composition. Got all these weightlifters that always say, they're what do you call it? Their genetics are just phenomenal.
Right.
Natural genetics. It doesn't take a lot of us. But then what happens? We're strong by nature. But then we get seduced thinking that we need all these other supplements and stuff that our people take that starts messing them up.
Right.
You think we had that when we was going to war with King David and fighting against the Moabites and the Ammonites and all of them? You think that we was taking supplements and steroids and all of that other stuff? We was naturally strong.
Right.
Because they couldn't stand before us. But those natural enhancement drugs are that's the founding of it. That's what helped them so that they could try to keep up. They could not do it naturally. So They figured we need an edge. We have to do something to help us keep up with them. And then our people start thinking, they got seduced thinking we need that stuff. We don't need that. But these are the ways that they deal wisely with us. Continue.
Verse 13, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage. And
see that? Bitter, hard bondage, slavery, affliction, torture, murder, taking our children from us, doing these things to afflict us. Read on.
In mortar and in brick.
See that? That
goes
back to we talked about again, building up. Who built this country? Wasn't that what the slaves were being chosen for? To colonize this and build this land up? Same thing that what it was doing in Egypt. Built for Pharaoh, treasure cities. Built for America, treasure cities and states and cities and towns. Go ahead.
And in all manner of service in the field, and all their service wherein they made them serve with rigor.
Now watch this. Read on.
And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shipra, and the name of the other Pua. And they said,
watch this.
And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stool.
So when they're ready to give birth, go ahead.
If it be a son, then ye shall kill him.
Do y'all see that? Is that any different when they did the Planned Parenthood, an abortion? Who was that against?
Our people. They always set up in our neighborhoods.
Man.
All over our neighborhoods.
Margaret Sanger, right?
Yeah.
You know, that wanted all minorities to be destroyed. Kill their children. Why? Because what did they say? The children of Israel are more and mightier than us. We don't need them multiplying because that will cause problems. So they had things what's known as genocide to destroy us. That's why our people are on drugs. That's why it's shipped into our communities. That's why our people have easy access to guns and weapons. Why? Because without knowledge, we destroy ourselves. So we take ourselves out for them due to our ignorance. See, this is the crafty counsel that they take to destroy us. Before, they were just coming out fighting against us, but they thought we were too strong. We were thorn to them. But again, Planned Parenthood, abortions, even with the Native Americans, when a woman, even when she would get an abortion, they would take out her uterus and they would give her a hysterectomy. Damn. So she could never have children. Do y'all see that?
It's crazy.
That's how they would do the Native American women on reservations. They would give them hysterectomy so they could never have children. So so when the Most High said, ye shall go into Egypt again with ships, and you have some fool that come to say, that didn't happen, that ain't no Israelite, that slap them.
Right.
Because it said spiritual Egypt and Sodom. And what we see happening then, we see happening now. Now, here's the thing. What we're reading about was happening to the Israelites, the Jews then in ancient Egypt, right? Mm-hmm. Who's this targeted to today in the spiritual Egypt? Is it the white man? You can pick any nation that's in America under it. Is it even the African nations? They don't have genocide against them on American soil. Is it the Asians? Is it the East Indians? Is it the Arabs? But when you look at who's targeted for genocide and destruction, Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. As the Most High said it would, he said when all Israel was oppressed together, they held them fast, they would not let them go. Right. That's how the Most High is raw with it.
You're not going to find no Planned Parenthood in no Calabasas, huh? It's not happening.
No.
It's not happening. You're not going to find it in Chinatown either. You know what I'm saying? It's just not going to happen.
You see? And that's what's so messed up is because, due to the poverty level, our people figure the best way is not to give birth. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so that's why they have these things of status. So that's why you have people figuring, I don't have time for a family. I have to get my degree and I have to get this. And when you look back early on, our family was like one of the first things that you established. Because how else can you thrive and come and remain as a nation without the family dynamic and having children? But when you have people teaching you that it's wrong to have children and teaching you to kill your children, but at the same time still be promiscuous so you can catch a disease.
Right.
You see how it works?
Right.
Don't go and have children and build a family, but go out and still be promiscuous, get sick and pass away. That's the goal. But who's that targeted towards? Who's that taught to? In the school systems, that's taught to our people. So a plan of genocide, as it was to destroy the men. Why the men? But it goes back to the same thing. They love our women, right?
Love our women, for sure.
They love our women, love our Israelite women. But the man is a threat. So that's why when you look at what's going on, you see how the man, the Native American Indian, the Latino, the Negro man, why we're targeted for that type of destruction. You see what I'm saying? Why it's more difficult for you to get a job than it is for your female counterpart to get a job. And of course, we have some people in our nation that's lazy and they don't want to do better. But when you put it statistically on the table, you have to look that the odds are not in our favor when you really put it down. You see what I'm saying? That's what you have to look at. In this country, they'll fund a woman to go to school before they fund a man. Well, why would they not fund the man who's supposed to be the leader and supposed to teach his children? Why would you not give him the education so he could do better for his family and uplift his family in that way? But no, they want to do it and give the woman. Why? So they can create that lopsided dynamic in the household.
Right.
That's dealing wisely with the Israelites. Nothing's changed. Y'all see that? So let's shoot real quick. So just showing you the parallel of Egypt and going again, whenever you want to know who the children of Israel is, again, look for the nation of power and look for the nation that they're afflicting primarily. There's your Israelite right there. Facts. There's your Israelite right there. Okay. So let's real quick shoot to the book of Baruch in Apocrypha. I hope y'all with us.
Israel, y'all still up with us? Some sevens in the chat. Put the sevens in the chat if y'all loving what the elder bringing out.
So it said, again, for Joseph was in Egypt already. We see how that's that parallel even now. You understand? So let's get Baruch chapter 4, verse 6 and 7.
Comes the book of Baruch, chapter 4, verse 6. You were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because ye moved the Most High to wrath.
You see that? So it said we were sold to the nations. You know, that's a fact. There's no denying that. We're living proof. This is not our land. We were brought here. Okay. Right. And our 10 tribe brothers that occupied this land before the southern kingdom arrived had it stolen from them. And they no longer thrive on it. Now it belongs to the so-called white man, who is the English and the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese. So, but the Most High brought this on us because we disobeyed him. This is what it comes down to. It's not because the nations are strong. It's because we weakened ourselves with disobedience. Read on.
Move the Most High to wrath. You were delivered unto the enemies. For you provoked him that made you by sacrificing unto devils.
See that?
Not to the Most High.
And that's what happened. We sacrificed to devils. We took idols to ourselves. You understand? We took on, we rather take religion rather than just do what the Most High is saying within the scriptures. Putting on rosaries and crucifixes and dream catchers and all these other images that's supposed to ward off spirits, and that's idolatry. Right. And that's where our people learn from looking at the other nations. When the Most High gave us a law that we have to follow. So we were put in bondage because we disobeyed. Was all of that? We can read to verse 7.
What verse?
Was that 7?
Yes, sir.
Okay, flip over to chapter 2. Let's read verse 30.
This is the book of Baruch, chapter 2, verse 30. For I knew that they would not hear me because it is a stiff-necked people.
See, our people are hard-headed. So that the Most High knows us. He knows his children. We're hard-headed. That's it. We don't want to listen. We don't want to listen until it's too late.
God.
That's how the Most High works with it. That's how we know. That's how we see who Israel is. He said, I knew they wouldn't hear me because they're stiff-necked people. They don't like to listen. Go ahead.
But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves.
Another prophecy. In the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. Aren't you remembering yourself? Aren't you remembering now and coming to the understanding that you're an Israelite?
God.
But where you at? In the land of your captivities.
Slavery, yeah.
You understand?
God.
You see? So this is how the Most High is showing us that his spirit is not departing from Israel. He told us that. He said, the spirit I put upon thee shall not depart from thy nor thy seed.
Right.
This is how we're able to wake up here in 2024. And brothers and sisters that's constantly waking up to the truth. The spirit of the Most High is opening you up now to receive this word. That's the Holy Spirit. In the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. Didn't Moses do that in ancient Egypt? Remember, Moses was shipped out when he was born. Right. Who found him? Pharaoh's daughter. Raised him up in the house of the Egyptians. Moses thought he was an Egyptian. The same thing when our people thought they were American and black and African American and Mexican and Jamaican and Puerto Rican and everything else, because that's what we were taught. Now, when we start to remember ourselves, now we say, wait a minute, no, I'm none of that. Those are bywords. I'm an Israelite. I'm of the children of the Most High. I'm the descendant of Jacob. Now we're remembering that. Then in addition to that, we're learning our laws again, and we're coming back. We're making that transformation called repentance to learn where we went wrong so that we could get back right with the Most High. That's what we have to do. In the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. So you're remembering your language. You're remembering who your forefathers are now. Read on.
Verse 32. And they shall praise me in the land of their captivity and think upon my name and return from their stiff neck and from their wicked deeds. For they shall remember the ways of their forefathers which sinned before the Lord.
See that? And that's what's happening right now. That's why we see what's going on. That's why we celebrate the Passover so that we can remember when we was in Egypt and make that correlation with that ancient Egypt and this modern Egypt.
Yeah.
So that we can start looking to be delivered from there. That's why we have all of our feasts represent a celebration of the upliftment and the deliverance of the children of Israel. Feast of Dedication, Purim, Nicanor, Memorial of Simon, which we're about to have in a couple of weeks.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because these are celebrations to remind us of Israel's victories over our enemies, which they want us to forget.
Right.
They don't want to show us how we went in and destroyed a lot of the Greek armies. Hold on. Excuse me. How we destroyed the Greek armies. How we fought against the Babylonians. How we fought against the Egyptians. But they want to give us Kwanzaa. Come on, man. Read on, bro.
And return from their stiff neck and from their wicked deeds. For they shall remember the ways of their forefathers which sinned before the Lord. And I will bring them again in the land which I promised with an oath unto their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they shall be lords over it. And I will increase them, and they shall not be diminished.
See, that's what the Most High is promising Israel for coming back. He said, listen, you were great, but now we fell. Now we're being oppressed. Now we're in bondage. Now the greatness that we have, other nations are utilizing it, and we get nothing. But the Most High said, nah, it's not all gone, because that's the promise. We have to come back, and then we can get what's rightfully ours and rule the world as we're supposed to. Read on.
And I will make an everlasting covenant with them to be their God, and they shall be my people, and I will no more drive my people Israel out of the land that I have given them.
Look at that. Who's he making this covenant with?
Israel.
He said, I will no longer drive my people Israel out of the land that I give them. That's a hell of a promise. because we've been driven out of our land many times due to our disobedience. But the Most High said, now enough is enough. We got to come back, do what's right so that we can receive these benefits. Okay. So we see that correlation with Israel today versus ancient Egypt. Okay. Let's go to the book of Daniel. So let's get into some of this, because what you're going to see is the same situation that happened in Daniel 2, or in the captivities that we're going to go into and talk about. Let's get Daniel chapter 7 and verse 4.
It's the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 4. It says, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings.
And before we get that, let me back up a little bit. Let's start at verse 1.
Come from the top. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and a vision of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven strode upon the great sea.
So now Daniel's getting a vision of prophecy from the Most High. Okay, hold that. Give me Hosea chapter 12. Hosea chapter 12 and verse 10.
You said chapter 12. Okay.
Yeah, Hosea 12 and verse 10.
It's the book of Hosea, chapter 12, verse 10. It says, I have also spoken by the prophets, and I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets.
So he said he's spoken unto the prophets, and the Most High said he uses similitudes. So when the Most High is showing a prophet a vision, he often uses analogies, similitudes, meaning something that represents one thing, but it means something else. Okay, that's a similitude or likeness of something. So we're going to read about some animals, but yet these animals aren't animals. They're actually talking about kingdoms and nations that's going to come upon the earth. But the Most High uses them as animals to describe their nature. Okay, so that's what we have to look at. So let's go back to Daniel. So he said he's spoken by the prophets and uses similitudes. Okay, the same reason why Christ spoke in parables. What did he say? Hold that. So let me get that in Mark.
It's the book of Mark, chapter 4.
Yep, 4 and 11.
Verse 11. And it reads, and he said unto them, unto you it is given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God.
So does that mean it's given to everybody? No, it's given to you, the children of Israel, those that are seeking truth. Not even all of Israel at this time, just those that are looking for repentance, that are trying to look and serve the Most High. Unto you it is given. Go ahead.
But unto them that are without, all these things are done in parables.
See, so Christ spoke about parables, and people get upset, be like, why don't you just say it plainly? And he said, it's not for you. So when you read the scriptures, you have to search the scriptures. You have to go in and understand, is the Most High really talking about a lion with wings? Does that exist? Or is he speaking of something in particular so that you can understand the nature of what he's speaking about? Okay, that's a parable, or that's a similitude, so, or also known as a proverb. Okay, a proverb also is a statement that has a meaning that has a deeper understanding behind it, like the early bird gets the worm. Are we really talking about birds? No, it means that when you study how birds operate, they come out in the morning to get worms, because when the grass is wet, the worms come out. And that's where the birds would get the worm to feed their young. So in other words, it's telling us that proverb is there to show us when you do take care of business early, you'll have better success than if you wait to the last minute. You understand? So that's how proverbs work. Same thing with similitudes and parables. Okay. So let's continue in Daniel chapter 7. And it says that the four winds strove upon the great sea. Go ahead.
Verse 3. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another.
Okay, so now remember similitudes. So it said these four winds strove upon the great sea. So it's talking about what? The Middle East. The Mediterranean is the great sea that it's talking about. Okay, So it's showing you that these kingdoms that we're reading about are going to start to take place. The stage is in the Middle Eastern area. Okay, read on.
Verse 3. It says, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle wings. Of the head to the wings thereof were plucked. And it lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the Salakia, and made stand upon the feet as a man's heart was given to it.
Okay, so the first thing we got to understand is that these beasts is talking about. Flip over. Let's read verse 17.
Verse 17. It says, these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth.
So right there, we see what the similitude is talking about. So it's not talking about a lion with eagle's wings per se. It's showing you the nature. Okay, when you look at a lion is known for what? To be strong. It's at the top of the food chain in the wilderness or in the jungle or in the wild. Okay, what eats the lion? It's known for brute strength. Okay, and so on and so forth. But with wings, because of what? It's swiftness. Wings are used to fly, to move faster than. That's why you take a plane rather than drive. Why? Because you can get there faster. So the wings symbolize swiftness rather than, feet and so on and so forth. But another thing too, who is this talking about? It's talking about the first king. Who is this first king? It's talking about. Flip over. Let's read chapter Daniel chapter 1 and verse 1. So we can now what we're going to read about. It said 4 kings that shall arise out of the earth. So we want to get who these, and it's not talking about just any kingdom. The kingdoms that we're reading about are kingdoms that's going to change the world. Right. That's important to understand. It's not talking about the kingdom of Assyria, or even though they had a power, but they were not a force compared to the kingdoms that these 4 that we're going to read about. Okay. These are going to be what's known as superpowers. They're going to change the world as it's known. Every one of them that comes up is going to be more powerful than the one before it. All right. But let's find out who this lion with eagle's wings is. Let's read Daniel 1 and verse 1.
From the top, it says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it.
So we see that Nebuchadnezzar's king of Babylon during the time of Daniel. Okay. The Babylonians came up against Judah or Jerusalem and took it. That's what led the children of Israel or the southern kingdom into Babylon, into captivity. Why? Because Babylon was a power at that point. Egypt had failed. Okay. You had Assyria coming up. You had areas of Syria. You had these other small powers coming up. But Babylon was one of the oldest kingdoms. However, they started to thrive between the 6th and the 7th and 6th century. And they started to thrive and take over, and they controlled a lot of the area. They controlled the middle. They invaded Babylon. They had the areas of Persia. They had all these, the East at that point, Asia Minor. They controlled that, parts of Egypt. They had that sewn up. Okay. But it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Okay. Flip over to chapter 2, Daniel chapter 2.
Stop.
Let's read Daniel 2 and let's read verse 38. So it said Nebuchadnezzar's king of Babylon. So what we're going to read is Daniel's a king Nebuchadnezzar is shown a vision, and it talks about this clay image that had the head of gold, had the body of silver and brass, and it had the midsection of another material. And it's also talking about the same kingdoms that we're reading about in Daniel chapter 7. Okay, so when we read about this, he's going to show you who that first kingdom is. Let's read that in verse 38.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 38. And it says, and wheresoever the children of Israel may dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heavens have given into their hands, have made the ruler over them all.
Hold on, wait a minute. Back up real quick. Read that again. So he's given, Nebuchadnezzar had a vision, and no one could understand it. And it was telling him about these 4 kingdoms, the same kingdoms we read about in Daniel. In Daniel chapter 2, it speaks of a clay image. Because remember, the Babylonians was into idolatry. Okay. So this image was made of all these different types of material that represented the head, the shoulders, the chest area, and the midsection. Then the feet is the fifth kingdom, which is the kingdom of Christ. That's going to break the whole image up. Okay. We're going to read about those same kingdoms in Daniel 7. However, in Daniel 7, the Most High uses animals to describe the same kingdoms. Okay. So remember, Nebuchadnezzar's king of Babylon, he's going to tell him this first kingdom that you see is you, the Babylonians. Okay. So read verse 38.
38 from the top. And it says, and wheresoever the children of Israel men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven had given into thy hand.
So that's how much power the Babylonians had. He said, everywhere people dwell, that power has been given into your hand. That's how much power you have. Okay. Because at the time of Daniel, remember, we see it said at the time of Daniel, who was in power? Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Okay. Right. So it's showing you that the Babylonians had power at this time, and they were the ones who ruled all where men dwelt. Okay, go ahead.
And have made thee ruler over them all.
Uh-huh.
Thou art this head of gold.
So he's saying to Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold, which is the first beast or the first part of the image that you saw representing the Babylonian kingdom. You are the first kingdom that the Most High is talking about in these prophecies. You are this head of gold. So what is that showing us? Let's go back to Daniel chapter 7 and let's read verse 4 again.
Verse 4 from the top. The first was like a lion and had eagle wings.
So now we just read that Daniel gave the interpretation of what Nebuchadnezzar saw, which was the same version of this dream. Okay. And he said, you are this head of gold. It's you. You have the power right now. So this lion with eagle's wings is speaking of the kingdom of Babylon. Okay. And we prove that further. Read on.
I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it.
So it said he beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. What does that mean? Till it was destroyed. Well, how did it get destroyed? Let's flip over to chapter 5. So now, what also happened with Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, who were kings of Babylon, the Most High made a writing appear on the wall, and they couldn't understand it. So again, they called Daniel to say, interpret this writing. We don't understand what it means. What is it saying? So let's pick up at Daniel 5 and read verse 25.
Verse 25. And this is the writing that written many tekel Eupherson. This is the interpretation. This is the interpretation of the thing many. God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it.
Now, so he's telling the king of Babylon at this time, when Daniel's seeing these kingdoms come up, he's seeing these kingdoms come up in power and then they go out of power. So he told Nebuchadnezzar, you are that first king, the head of gold. You are the one of the first beasts that's mentioned. He says, however, the interpretation of the writing means, Menes, is that the Most High has numbered your kingdom and has finished it. Meaning that what? The Most High brought him up and the Most High said, that's it. You're coming out of power. Another kingdom will come up. Why is he telling us that? Let's flip over to Daniel chapter 2. And let's read verse 20.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 20. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his.
That's right. Read.
And he changes the times and the seasons.
That's right.
He removed kings and set it up kings.
So who removes kings and sets up kings?
Most High.
The Most High. That's it. So the only reason why the so-called white man is in power today is who put him there?
Most High.
So when king of Babylon was in power here, who put him there?
Most High.
And then he said, the Most High has found your kingdom numbered, and now it is over. So the Most High is going to take him out of power. So he said that he setteth up kings and remove kings. Go ahead.
He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding.
You see that? So wisdom, knowledge, rulership, all comes from the Most High. Let's flip over back to Daniel chapter 5.
Come.
Verse 26.
27. Oh, verse 26.
Yep.
This is the interpretation of the theme, Mene. God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it.
That's it. So he said the end of Babylonians' rule has come to an end. Read.
Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting.
Meaning that he was weighed in the balances of righteousness and he's found lacking. Wanting mean lacking because the Babylonians were evil. So no mercy can be shown to them because they're not following the laws of the Most High. Remember, from Babylon comes all the idolatrous things people keep today, like Christmas. The virgin birth is a fixation of Babylonian folklore, Semiramis and Tammuz and all this other stuff that our people follow blindly because they don't understand. But that a lot of that custom comes from the Christmas tree, comes from ancient Babylon. Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
Verse 27. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balance and art found wanting.
Now watch this. Remember, he said that the Most High has numbered your kingdom, and that is it, and it's done. Now watch verse 28. Who's going to come up next? Read.
Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians.
So your kingdom will be taken and given unto the Medes and the Persians. So the Most High is showing you, but he's also giving you an interpretation in the scriptures too. You understand? So now let's flip over back to Daniel chapter 7. So we see that Nebuchadnezzar was a king of Babylon who had rulership, great rulership. The Most High found and put it into his kingdom. Now it said that the Persians and Medes would come up. Okay. So let's read Daniel 7 and let's pick up at verse 5.
Verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear.
And
it raised up himself on one side.
So now I said this beast was like a bear. Remember, similitudes. It's an analogy. Why a bear? Because a bear is one of the only animals that's strong enough to go against a lion. You understand?
Only one a lion around.
You see what I mean? To get a bear in its ferocious state, it's powerful, it's strong, and it's deadly. Okay. So it's saying, but it said it lifted up itself on one side. Now, who did we read that would take the kingdom from the Babylonians? The Persians and Medes. So when you can look this up, just Google right now, who defeated the Babylonians? It's going to tell you the Persians and Mede Empire. What happened? The Persians were one empire. The Persians are the children of Elam. Okay. Persia is the land what we call Iran, or Iran today. They came to by themselves. They weren't strong enough to fight the Babylonians. So they merged with the Median Empire, which are Japhetic people, and they came together in a conglomerate military might to fight the Babylonians, and that's how they prevailed. So it's no different than how you look at states and countries today. The U.S. would join up with another country to fight a mutual enemy. Okay. Right. So this is what the Persians and Medes did because the Babylonians were too strong for them alone. So they said, you know what? An enemy to your enemy is my friend. You see what I mean? So since we have the same enemy, we might as well be friends, come together and take down our mutual enemy. So that's what the Persians and Medes did. Okay. But the Persians were a lot stronger than the Medes out of the two. Read on.
Like a bear, and it raised up itself on one side.
Which is the Persians. Go ahead.
And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it.
Right, because the Persians and Medes, 3 of the chief countries that they took was Egypt, Babylon, and Lydia to destroy which was the Babylonian central places of power. Okay, we're dealing with like 587 BC right now. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, like 539, somewhere around there. 539 BC. Go ahead.
3 ribs in the mouth and between it, between the teeth of it. And they said, thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh.
That means go out and do what? Does it mean go eat flesh, go eat meat? No. Remember, we're talking about nations. So the devouring flesh is synonymous, meaning go out and conquer, go out and rule. The Most High now took the Babylonians down and put the Persians and Medes in power. Let's verify that even further. Let's go back to Daniel chapter 5 and let's prove that. Because somebody might be saying, well, how do you know? How do you know it's the Babylon? Well, I just showed you. But now I'm going to show you that it's the Persians that took down the Babylonians. Remember, he said, thy kingdom is come to an end and the Most High has finished it. Now, let's read verse 36.
Daniel chapter 5,
30. I'm sorry, verse 30.
Verse 30. It says, in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain.
So now Belshazzar was another king that came up at about the time of Nebuchadnezzar. The Chaldeans is another word for the Babylonians. Okay, you can look that up. It'll tell you they're Babylonians. The same thing. It says in that same night that message, that writing came on the wall, that Daniel interpreted for them, that his kingdom had numbered and he was found lacking. He said, in that same night was Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, slain. And what happened after that? Read verse 31.
31. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old.
You'll see that? So Darius the Median. Okay. Now also who was involved with that? Cyrus. Okay, you had King Cyrus of Persia and you had Darius, king of the Medes. Remember, these were two kingdoms that came together to fight and destroy their mutual enemy, the Babylonians. And we just read that where it said that that kingdom is given to the Persians and Medes. You remember that in Daniel 2? Now we see that in that same night, Darius took the kingdom, the Median, and took the kingdom being about 62 years old. He was 62 years old when he took that kingdom. So we see that the Babylonians were there at the start of Daniel's vision. They got taken down. The Persians and Medes are now in power. Okay. And now how does that affect us? Because remember, during Babylon, we were taken and made to live in Babylon. That's where Daniel was when all this was going on. He was in the regions of Babylon. They were, remember, the Jews were southern kingdom were taken from Jerusalem. Okay. That was known as the Babylonian exile. Okay. So they were taken in Babylon. And that's where they started to develop. When you start looking at days like when Israel started naming the months, calling it Nisan and Tammuz and all that, those names were picked up in times of when we were in Babylon. Okay.
Lunar Sabbath.
What's that?
Lunar Sabbath.
Exactly. Lunar Sabbath.
Yeah.
Okay. The calendar alterations and the crescent moon, all those different things were picked up through Babylonian customs. Okay. So, you know, if you look up and at the god Nana or the god Sin, you will see that these were gods that they worshipped at the time of the first sliver of the moon. Okay. So a lot of these customs that our people picked up were what were influenced through the captivity of Babylon. So when the Persians came into power now, the Persians said, well, we're going to be a little bit more, we're not going to be as treacherous. We're going to give you something known as sovereignty. Sovereignty is when you allow a nation that's in captivity to return and function on their own. They're sort of like been given autonomy to function as a people, but yet they're still controlled. Okay. Right. So this is what the Persians and Medes did with Israel. They said, we'll let you go back to Israel. They let Nehemiah rebuild the wall. He gathered up the priests and men of Israel to rebuild the wall that the Babylonians had tore down. Okay. He had Ezra. Ezra had to restore the priesthood so that Israel could start functioning as a nation again. So the Persians allowed us to do that, but that wasn't it. They still fought us and they still destroyed a lot of our people. They were still our enemy. But this was a kingdom that came up and they ruled for hundreds of years until the next kingdom that came up. Let's go back to Daniel. Now you could Google who destroyed or who conquered the Persians and Medes. This is all stuff you could find on your own. But the Most High is showing you in the scriptures clearly. Daniel 7, and let's pick up at verse 6.
Daniel chapter 7, verse 6. And this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
So now this one's like a leopard, okay? But it's a beast. So if you look up who took down Persians and the Medes, let's find out. Let's go over to Daniel the 8th chapter.
God.
Let's get Daniel chapter 8 and let's read verse 3.
It's the book of Daniel chapter 8, verse 3.
Yeah.
It says, then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. Now
remember, the Most High said he speaks to the prophets in similitudes. So
Right.
here's another vision that Daniel's having. He keeps getting pieces of the same dream, but he just gets a little bit more detail over time. So when you read 7, it says that it was a leopard, that was swift and had 4 wings on the back of it. Okay. Now we're reading where it says now it's a ram that had 2 horns. All right. And say one was higher than the other. Now remember, the Persians were always higher than the Medes. This is talking about the Persian and Mede Empire. Okay. Read on.
And the higher came up last.
Uh-huh.
I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand.
So you see that? So he said that the beast was pushing in all these different directions, conquering. Because what did the Most High tell him to do? Go and devour much flesh. Go and conquer. And that's what the Persians did. Okay, the Persians and Medes, they took over all the things that the Babylonians controlled. Now it was controlled by the Persians. And then some. So remember, each kingdom that comes up gets more powerful than the next. All right. So again, we're not talking about small nations. These are world powers that's ruling the known world at that time. Okay. So he devoured and took over many nations. Nothing could stand before him. Read on.
But he did according to his will and became great.
Uh-huh.
Verse 5. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west out of the face of the whole earth.
So now you had this ram with the 2 horns. Okay. Now here's a he-goat that's coming. Here's a goat now. Go ahead.
Behold, a he-goat came from the west of the face of the whole earth, and he touched not the ground.
Uh-huh.
And the goat had a noble horn between his eyes.
Now that's showing you how swift he was. Remember, we talked the beast we left off on in Daniel 7 was talking about a leopard, right? That had 4 wings of a fowl behind it, right? So now we're showing, he said this ram was coming at the 2, or this he-goat was coming at the ram so fast that his feet touched not the ground. That's how fast he was moving. But if you look up, what we're talking about are the Greeks, because the Greeks is the nation that conquered the Persians and Medes. And why is it known as a leopard? Because of the swiftness of how it conquered. If you look up the Greeks, they conquered very quickly. They took down Persia really quick. And Alexander had a small army. Okay. Right. So this is what the Most High is showing. But the scriptures are going to reveal it. Read on.
Verse, let me see. What verse was that? Verse 5, verse 6. And he came to the ram and had 2 horns, which I seen standing before the river, and the ram unto him in the fury of his power.
So the goat ran into the ram with the fury of his power, right? You see how when you see 2 rams hit and they buck and hit each other, okay? This is what was going on. Read on.
Verse 7. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with the clover against him and smote the ram.
So now this he-goat said move with caller, which is anger. He came with so much fierce anger. He said, smote the ram. Okay. Remember, who's the ram? The Persians and Medes. Who's the goat? The Greeks. Okay. Read on.
And break his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him.
Now that's the ass whooping. So he came and he said the goat came so hard at the ram, disabled him, knocked him, destroyed him, cast him to the earth, and then stomped on him. He got stomped out. So it's showing you how fierce the Greek military came down and destroyed the Persians and Medes. Read on.
And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand.
No one could help him. Why? Because the ram, who was the Persians and Medes, were the ones in power. They were the powerhouse. Who was going to help? They were the ones helping and loaning help to others. Who's going to help them? But when they saw that the powerhouse was down, they said, no, we ain't messing with them. Read on.
Verse 28, verse 8. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 noble ones towards the 4 winds of the heavens. So
now that the he-goat is in power, it became great, and 4 horns came from it. Now, let's find out who this is talking about. Flip over, and let's read verse 20. Here's the interpretation. Very easy.
Daniel chapter 8, verse 20.
Yep.
Verse 20. The ram which thou sawest have two horns are the kings of Media and Persia.
See that? So it's right there.
Right. The answer is in the book.
It answers right there. He said, so he said that the ram that you saw that had two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Remember, it said one horn was higher than another. We already explained that because in Daniel 7, it said he lifted up himself on one side. So we know that the Persians were stronger than the Medes, but they came together to defeat the Babylonians. Then when their time was fulfilled, the Greeks came up and took down the Persians and Medes, who was in power. Read on, watch it say it.
Verse
So
21.
who's the goat that destroyed the Persians and Medes?
Yep. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king.
Who was the first king? Let's find out. That's in the Bible too. Let's go to First Maccabees chapter 1. So you see how we're reading when the Most High said he uses similitudes, and it's just showing you that he's using these things. But when you precept upon precept, it puts everything together. You see how that works? Okay. First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 1. Now remember, the Babylonians were taken down by the Persians and Medes. We just read how the third beast that would come up would be like a leopard. Then we read that it was similar to a he-goat. Read on.
Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1. And it happened after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of Persia and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece.
So you see that? It said that Alexander smote Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, and became the first king over Greece. It said the notable horn that was on the goat was who? The first king. That was talking about Alexander. So we see the vision, and Daniel was understanding, but we didn't see it actually come to pass. Daniel never saw the Greeks come into power. Remember, he was just shown the vision. Daniel did see the very early part of when the Persians and Medes destroyed Babylon, but Daniel didn't, he wasn't alive when the Greeks came into power. So that's why that history is shown in Maccabees. Another reason why they wanted to remove the book. Y'all see that? So whenever you want to know about the history that separates the Old from the New Testament, it's right here. These are the years that's missing, that they're trying to take over. You know why? Because it shows you how the Israelites got Hellenized, because that's the Greek history is a very, very important topic that you have to understand. When you deal with the Greeks brought to the world Hellenization. Hellenization is when they wanted all the world to act Greek, speak Greek, think Greek, have Greek names. And guess what? When you read in the New Testament and you see people's names like Titus, that's a Greek name, right? Cornelius, Apollos, Timothy.
Yeah.
Those are all Greek names. But and so you know what happened? Why they did that? It's so that they can make people think that all the Gentiles were of other nations. Y'all see that?
Yeah.
So they omitted the history so that you won't understand that the Timothys and the Apollos and the Corneliuses that you read about in the New Testament are actually Israelites.
Right.
That come through they're descendants of Hellenized Jews. Jews who were absorbed into thinking that they were Greeks. That's what Hellenization is. So when Paul writes, so that's why a lot of people get confused with the writings of Paul. When Paul says, hey, there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek. What will the Christian say? You see, the Jew and the Greek, they're the same. God loves them all.
Right.
But when you understand the history, why did Paul say there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek? He's telling you that they're the same. However, one remembered his culture, knew who he was. The Greek is the Israelites that got absorbed into the Greek way, which we'll read about in Maccabees, because it shows you the whole Hellenization process. It was unlawful. It was against Greek law to even call yourself a Jew. Did y'all know that? So then what could you be?
Gotta
If
be a
you're a
Greek.
Jew by nationality, but it was illegal for you to call yourself a Jew, then what would you be?
Gotta be a Greek.
You got to be a Greek,
Yeah,
which then puts you in the category of a Gentile or a heathen. But guess what? Your nationality, your bloodline and ancestry is an Israelite. You see what I'm saying? So that's when you understand of the Jew and the Gentile situation in the New Testament. The Most High is only dealing with Israel. Don't get confused. That's why this history, that's why they tried to take that out, so you don't put the pieces together so that you can solve that puzzle. Right. But we see that the Babylonians were in power. They got taken down. The Persian Medes came up. They got taken down. Now the Greeks are in power. Now the Greeks are going to do something completely different. But make no mistake, when we were in Babylon, they did things to the Jews too. Remember, the Babylonians set laws just like they do now. When you hear the music and all the instruments, you have to fall down and worship the image. Remember that? Yep. Your national anthem and Pledge of Allegiance, they do the same thing now. Yeah. Then even with the Persians and Medes, what history do we have to help us with that? The book of Esther.
Right.
Because you got to remember, Haman, who was an Agagite, who was a Amalekite, which was the seed of Esau.
Edomite, yeah.
Right. Wanted to exterminate the Jews. You understand?
Because we didn't want to bow down to him, right? It was
something bow down, man.
It was something like that, yeah.
Those are the heroes of Israel, the ones that didn't give in. They didn't want to bow down. So when you read about Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego in the book of Daniel, how Daniel didn't want to stand up. He didn't bow down and turn from the ways of the Most High to satisfy his status.
All right.
They heard the music. They said, man, we ain't bowing down to no statue. And what did the king do? He threw him in the furnace.
Furnace, yeah.
But guess what? They was walking around in the furnace unburnt. Untouched. Right. That's the power of the Most High. So when you read about the Persian and Mede history, although they gave us sovereignty and let us return to build our wall, they still afflicted us. Right. It wasn't peaceful.
Nah, it wasn't at
all. You understand? That's why you had Mordecai who wouldn't bow down to them either. See, these are the ones that started the revolutions, that started the revolt. That's why our people always have the fighting instinct in us when we're being oppressed. Mordecai said, man, I ain't bowing down to you. And wanted to have all the Israelites exterminated. This is what these nations tried to do. So when I said earlier how a lot of the history that we read about is centered around the Israelites, that's how it works. We're the chosen people of the Lord. Don't think they don't know who we are and they think that the moves that they make are just random. No, this stuff is designed. This is engineered. They remember, what did the Egyptians say? Let us deal wisely with them. So the Babylonians did the same exact thing. Let us deal wisely with them. The Persians and Medes said, let us deal wisely with them. Although they had power, we were the focus. But guess what? Here's another fun fact. Any nation that was ever in power, in world power, who did they have in captivity?
Israelites.
Israelites.
For sure.
When Egypt was a force, who was in captivity with them?
Israelites.
And when Israel left, what happened to Egypt?
They fell.
That's it.
God.
You see? So when Babylon, who did they have in captivity? The Israelites. Right. The Persians and Medes, who did they have in captivity? The Israelites. Right. The Greeks, they invaded Jerusalem, had Israel in captivity, bondage. Who does America have in bondage now and who's thriving?
Right.
What did the Most High say? What the scripture we went into the beginning? What's then is now. There's no new thing under the sun. Excuse me. So let's read that again in First Maccabees.
It's the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, and it happened after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, the king of Persia and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece.
So you see that? So, excuse me. So Alexander became the first king of the Greeks. Okay, read on. Excuse me.
Verse 2. It made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth.
See that? So not only did they take down the Persians and Medes, it said they made many wars with other nations to take over provinces, to take to take world power at that time. Okay, go ahead.
Many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth.
You see that? So now when you look up the word Egypt, first of all, Egypt is a Greek word. You understand? The word Egypt, meaning bondage, is what? A Greek word. The word Ethiopia, is a Greek word. When you look at the library in Egypt, Alexandria, who's that named after? Alexander the Greek. So you see Greek influence all throughout. The city of Antioch that you read about in the New Testament, who's that named after?
Antiochus.
That's right. Who we read about, who Daniel also prophesied about. So check this out. So again, we see the Bible prophesying about events that would happen in the Apocrypha books.
Right.
So do they go together?
Absolutely.
You see that? So we read the New Testament, references the Apocrypha books, and we see the Bible prophesying about events held in the Apocrypha. So when someone says that, well, they're non-canonical, that's a lie. Because we see what's being fulfilled right now. And we see the mess and see what started to happen as the Greeks began to gain more power. So it said that they slew the kings of the earth and had control. Read on.
And went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations. So much that the earth was quiet before him.
You see that? It said the earth was quiet before him. No one could stand before the Greeks at this point. This is what the Most High was showing us. The power of the nation. Remember, he said, he setteth up kings, he removeth kings. So Alexander took down the Persians and Medes. His military was too strong. Nobody could stand before him. Now we're dealing with about the time 331 BC. The Greeks are in power. Okay. Then you'll see that the Greeks were taken down. I don't want to go into the Roman history because I really want to deal with the Greeks because of Simon that's coming up. But the Romans ended up taking down the Greeks. And then that's why you see the Romans in power in the New Testament. So again, those missing timelines is right here. The time from Persia up to the time of Rome is here. That's why we can't remove it. And that's why people get confused and don't understand that transition of history of how our people began to be Gentiles. That's important. That's why Christianity has done a number and our people can't understand because they think they're Gentiles. Right. They think that they're other nations. They think that they're heathens. Heathen is just a word for Gentile or nation.
Right.
All right. Continue on.
So he quieted that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up.
So pride came in. Of course, when you're in power, you start to get cocky, you start to get prideful, and so on and so forth. But remember, it said that this ram, the goat, ran into the ram with fury. And then he said he had four notable wings on the back of it. We're going to find out what these notable wings are. Go ahead.
Verse 4. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings and became tributaries unto him. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die.
So now after Alexander then took control, had everything in check, all nations was in submission, giving him gifts and some complete submission to the Greeks, he started to get sick. Okay, you look up the history, he got a disease. Okay, some say it was syphilis, some say it was some other sexually transmitted thing, whatever. But nonetheless, he got sick. And so he said, well, now that he's going to die, he had to divide up the kingdom so that the Greeks can continue to have power. Okay, read on.
Right, verse 6. Wherefore he called his servants, such that were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive.
See that? So he parted his kingdom while he was still alive. So right before he died, he said, hey, he brought up his generals, his four generals. Those are the four wings that it's talking about. Who are the four generals? You have Ptolemy. So when you read about Cleopatra and the Ptolemy dynasty, that's who you're talking about. Cleopatra was not African. Okay, Cleopatra was of the children of the Greek lineage. She was a daughter of Ptolemy. Okay, then you had Cassander, you had Lysimachus, and you also had who's the other one? Seleucus. Okay, and so you had these four generals that controlled the north, south, east, and west. This is how Alexander made sure he controlled and that the Greek lineage would still prosper and control the world at that time. So imagine they controlled the east. So that was from Babylon all the way up to the Mediterranean, all of the Middle East, Persia, all of going down into what we call Iraq and all of these other Afghanistan, all these places today. Okay, moving down into areas of the of Arabia, coming all the way, going down into Egypt, all the way south into the land of Egypt, Libya. It's where you get Cyrene in these places, Ethiopia, all of those places, what we call Northern Africa. Then going all the way up north into Syria, Asia Minor, Tyre, Zidon, which we call in those areas of Asia Minor known as Turkey today. Then going farther west into the areas of, that's where you get Thessalonica, Philippi, all these Greek names because the Greeks had took over these areas, okay? Pontus and all these other places. So when you see these places names in the New Testament, you see the Greek influence there, okay? Then you see, why did Paul speak Greek? Why did Paul speak Hebrew also? How did you get Timothy and Titus and all of these other Israelites that had Greek names that were also called Greeks? Because they were Israelites that had got Hellenized through the Greek principle. Okay. Was all of that? Let's continue.
Verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died.
So after he took control, he reigned 12 years and he died. Okay. And his kingdom was divided up. Read on.
Verse 8, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years.
See that? So the generations, and that's how you got these different dynasties, the Ptolemaic, the Seleucid dynasty, and so on and so forth. These were children or their sons that took their throne when their fathers died. Okay. And that's how the Greeks remained in power. And they made sure that they contained those areas, the north, south, east, and west. And this is how they maintained, as I said, kept power for many years. Okay. So then as time passes, then something starts to happen. Let's find out what happens.
Verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root.
So even though they were, now another thing we got to understand is when the Greeks came into power, this is the first time that the so-called white man has received rulership. This is the first time. 331 BC, the so-called white man did not have world power or anything like that prior to that time. All right. They're not of the children of Japheth. So-called white man is Esau, he's a children of Shem, one of the sons of a descendant of Abraham, the brother of Isaac. That's your so-called. That's another lesson we did when we talk about the I forget the name of it, but it's on one of the videos. But we went deep into that. Also, too, the book.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, the Son of Tradition. Yeah, you can get that.
Yeah, it's a whole chapter in the book. A mind well instructed. You know, after the Sabbath, get the book because the stuff that I'm talking to about in the prophecies are in that whole thing that proves to you who the so-called white man that he's Esau.
History and all that. Yeah, it's a good book.
History, the migration, all of that, and then the prophecies and historical references that breaks it down, showing you who he is. Okay, so nonetheless, we start to see this wicked root to come up. Who's this wicked root? Let's read on.
Verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, the king, who have been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of Greeks.
You see that? So Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. Epiphanes means what? God manifest. He thought he was God. He believed that he was God in the flesh. That's how cocky this guy was. He said a wicked root. Now, the earth was already given into the hand of the wicked. Remember, it said evils increase. When the so-called white man, when the Greeks came into power, it said evils multiplied in the earth. Now, it says out of that evil, a wicked root. So that means he was dead, because you're going to see how Antiochus came in and really persecuted the Israelites. He did a number on Israel. He made sure Israel could not keep no laws. Israel would not worship the Most High, destroyed the sanctuary. Let's get that prophecy in Daniel. Let's go back to Daniel 8. Let's get Daniel chapter 8. And let's read verse let's read verse 8.
Look at Daniel chapter 8, verse 8.
So it said it came up of them a wicked root. Now remember, the Persians, Medes got taken down by Alexander of the Greeks, and now we're reading about after Alexander died, his generals took over the four parts, north, south, east, and west, and had succession for many years. Then after that, said then a wicked root came out of them, called Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. Okay, now let's read about the prophecies of him Daniel saw before he before they actually the prophecy was fulfilled. Daniel 8, and let's pick up at verse 8.
Verse 8, therefore the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven.
Now we just read that because it said when Alexander died, he divided his kingdom amongst his four generals. Okay, so now we're seeing it fulfilled in Maccabees, but we see the prophecy in Daniel. Now, mind you, Daniel was not alive during the time of the Maccabees, or the any of that history there. Read on.
Verse 9, and out of one of them came forth a little horn which waxed exceeding great towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land.
Now, so remember, this came out of them a wicked root, surnamed Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, and he said he waxed to the east, to the west, and toward the pleasant land. Well, what's the pleasant land? Israel. So he's coming to do Israel again. These nations coming to power. Who do they come to subdue? The children of Israel. Read on.
Verse 10. It was waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it came down some of the hosts and the stars to the ground and stumped upon them.
So who's the stars of Israel? It's talking about the children of Israel. Came in, invaded Israel, invaded the land, killed many brothers and sisters. It tells you that all gladness was turned to mourning. They did a number. They destroyed Israel. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 11. Yeah, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host.
See, that's why his name was called Epiphanes, surnamed Epiphanes. Okay, God manifest.
Right.
God in the flesh. That's what he thought he was. So he said he magnified himself even to the hosts of heaven. Okay, so that lets you know who it's talking about. Read on.
Facts. And by him, the daily sacrifice was taken away.
Now, what does it mean? It says by him was the daily sacrifice taken away.
That law he put in, man.
That's it. That by him was the daily sacrifice taken away. Let's go there real quick. Let's go back to Maccabees.
I hope y'all get this, Israel, man. The elder going into some history and prophecy that's very pivotal in understanding and breaking down his Bible, or is undeniable at this point.
Man.
You want to when it's forbidden to give a burnt offerings? You want that one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start at verse 44 for context.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 44.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's start at verse.
Want to go up?
Let's start at verse 40.
Okay, verse 40.
No. I'm
41?
sorry. 37.
37. God. It says, thus they shed innocent.
I'm sorry. 36. 36.
36. God. Verse 36. For it was a place to live and wait against the sanctuary.
To lie in wait against the sanctuary. Go ahead.
Lie in wait against the sanctuary. And an evil adversary to Israel.
Uh-huh.
Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary.
So the sanctuary was where Israel, of course, came to worship the Most High. That was our place of worship. So in order to come in and to afflict and mock the Jews, they said, well, we're going to go and destroy the place where they worship their God. That was their way of being completely disrespectful. Okay. So this is what's going on. So they went in and destroyed the sanctuary on every side. Go ahead.
Verse 38, and so much that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers.
Now look at that. So the city was made a habitation of strangers. So other nations started to come in and populate the area. Okay. So that's why when you read in the New Testament, when Christ says to his apostles, go not into the way of the Gentiles. Y'all see that? Because Gentiles was all around. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's why you got to know this history so you can understand why Paul and Christ and the apostles was not going to these other certain cities and other regions, because there were no Israelites there at that time. Okay, go ahead.
And became strangers to those that were born in her, and her own children left her.
See that? Because to try to survive, they had to flee out of Jerusalem. This is what's known as the diaspora. So this is how you get Jews living in areas of Rome, because they fled. They had to flee Jerusalem because this is the torture that they were going through. So they fled into the. If you watch the video that we did a few weeks ago about Islam, I gave you a map showing you in Acts chapter 2. It showed you all the different locations where the Jews were and where they came from in the New Testament, because this is where it started. This is when they started to flee into Thessalonica, Philippi, Rome, Galatia. All those areas are Greek influenced places that the Greeks control, but the Jews fled into those areas to escape from this situation right here that was going on in their land, Jerusalem. Okay. And so if you leave your heritage to go live amongst the Gentile that's already being Hellenized, speaking Greek, then what's your language going to be?
Greek.
Who you think you're going to start thinking Greek, speaking Greek, going into Greek philosophy, all of that stuff. That's what our people were doing. So that's when you get to the New Testament, they started to be known as Greeks. Okay. So, but this is the history that's showing that. Read on.
Verse 39. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt.
See, that's work. That's horrible. Read on.
Verse 40. And had been her glory, as had been her glory, so was the dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning.
So Israel, which was supposed to be the greatest nation, that had so much glory and honor, has now gone completely down, based on this wicked root and the affliction that the Greeks did to the children of Israel. Read on.
41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to the whole kingdom that all should be one people.
There it is. See, that all should be one people. What's that called? Hellenization. So, and why is it called Hellenization? Because remember, the word Greek came later. They originally called themselves Hellens. Okay. So when you see the word Hellenist or Hellenization, it's speaking about conforming to Greek word, Greek custom, Greek law, Greek ideologies. Okay. So he said he wrote that all should be one people, one world order. This is what he's saying. And not just Jews, all nations should all be called Greeks. This is what their whole motivation is. They wanted everybody to be Greek. So there would be no Africans, there would be no Jews, there would be no German, there would be no barbarians. You would be Greek. Period. Go ahead.
Verse 42. And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathens agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
See that? So all the other nations agreed, because why? They knew if you refuse, what would happen? You'll be tormented. You'll be enslaved. You'll be destroyed. So the fear was already set. So they said, well, we have nothing else to lose. We might as well do it. So even some Israelites consented. So there you see how the Israelites are starting to become other nations, are starting to become Greeks, that all should be one people. Watch this. Hold that real quick. Go to Ephesians.
Okay.
And let's get Ephesians. Let's get chapter 2 and let's read verse 11.
It's the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 11. Wherefore, remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh.
Stop right there. So Paul is talking to the Ephesians. These were Jews that lived in Ephesus, a Greek province. So he says, remember in times past ye were called Gentiles. Why were they called Gentiles? Let's find out. Read.
In the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called circumcision in the flesh made with hands.
Because the Jews that knew the law of Moses, that grew up in Jerusalem, they were called and considered the circumcision. And anyone else that did not abide by the covenant were considered uncircumcision, heathen, unclean Gentiles. Okay. But Paul is saying you used to be a Gentile. Well, by nationality, it's no way you could used to be something and no longer be it. That's like saying you used to be a Negro.
Used to be a Chinese.
Right. There's no way. You are what your ancestry is. But he's laying down something because we just read that many of the Jews consented to his religion to be one people, which wasn't Israel. Go ahead.
Verse 12, that at the time you were without Yahweh Shai, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel.
See, because hold on. So when you were living as a Gentile, you were following the ways of Greece. Excuse me. You're following the ways of Greece, just like people think they're American or they think they're African American and they don't think that they're Israel. So they follow the ways of this society. You understand? So then when they come into the truth, they acknowledge that they're Israelites. So then Paul would say, remember when you used to think you was African? Remember in time past, you was a Mexican? Because you were without Christ. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you were without Christ, the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenant of promise, having no hope and without the Most High in the world.
You see that? So they were considered Gentiles because they didn't know Christ. They didn't have any understanding of what the covenant was for them. They technically just didn't know who they were. But remember, what did the scripture say? In the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. See that?
God.
So that's how these Israelite that were having Greek names started to wake up and acknowledge who they were, just like Moses. Moses thought he was an Egyptian, but the Spirit of the Most High came upon him and he realized he was an Israelite.
Right.
Okay. So this is what was happening here. Let's go back to the Apocrypha.
It's the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 42. And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathens agreed to the commandment of the king. Yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols.
See that?
The Sabbath.
See, is that any different than what people are doing now when they consent to Christianity or Catholicism or any other doctrine that's away and against what the scriptures teach? See, it's the same situation. So this is what happened when they came in and tried and destroyed the sanctuary and turned Israel away from the Most High. Go ahead.
For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days.
Look at that. Y'all see that? They should profane the Sabbath, festival days. So don't keep any of the biblical holy days. Keep the worldly ones. No different than what our people are doing now. They don't want to keep Passover and Day of Atonement and Tabernacles. They want to keep Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, Thanksgiving. Same situation, same exact thing. Read on.
Verse 46, and polluted the sanctuary and the holy people. Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swan flesh and unclean beasts.
That's right. So even instead of knowing good and well that pork or swine is unlawful, and they're putting this on the altar for the Most High. So this is where it becomes completely disrespectful and a means to deface, disrespect the Most High. This is how Israel was being flipped. This is that transition we're reading about. Okay. So this is why I said that came out of them a wicked root and went out and destroyed and changed. Let's go back to Daniel. So that's what Antiochus did. He brought in much destruction. Excuse me. And so let's read that verse 10 again, 8 and 10.
It's the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 10. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and came down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stumped upon them. Yeah.
So Antiochus, and Antiochus came in, the wicked root, and afflicted a lot of the children of Israel. Read on.
Yeah, he magnified himself, even the prince of hosts, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down.
So did y'all see that? What we just read, how he said they profaned the Sabbaths, profaned the altar, tore down the sanctuary. It says by him was the daily sacrifice taken away. Where were the sacrifices of Israel performed? In the sanctuary, where the altar is. So if that's taken away, no sacrifices can be made. They can't give the Most High the offerings according to the law.
Right.
So this was how he ceased Israel from serving the Most High, because they also know when Israel doesn't serve the Most High, we weaken ourselves. Okay, so this is what happened. He says, by him was the daily sacrifice taken away. We don't read about that in no other nation within Genesis to Malachi. That event happened here in the Maccabees during the time of Greek rule. Read on.
Verse 12. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and cast it down. The truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered.
See that? Because remember, what was his decree? That all shall leave their laws and be one people. It said, in so much that even some of Israel left and kept the strange laws of the land. Let's go back to Maccabees real quick.
Yeah.
Read chapter 1. And let's pick up at verse let's pick up at verse 11.
Verse 11. In those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us.
Mm. Keep on.
For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
You see that? So it said, wicked men went out of Israel, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that's around us. For since we departed from them, we've had much sorrow. Meaning, since we're not aligning ourselves with them, our resources are cut off. We're catching hell now. These are your sellouts. These are your sellouts in Israel. They're still around today.
For sure. With the price, right?
So it said, by reason of transgression, he gathered a host. This is the host of those that's working hand in hand with our oppressors to afflict their own people. Read on.
Verse 12. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen.
Do y'all see that? So they even went to get laws made so that they can transgress.
Facts.
Our people. Wicked. So let's go back to Daniel. Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to fight this little cold.
Verse 13.
Yeah. So it said, by him was the daily sacrifice taken away. And he gathered a host that practiced and prospered. Read on through wickedness. Go ahead.
Then I heard one stink speaking, and another stink said unto the certain saint, which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden down underfoot?
So now, so he said, how long will it be from the daily sacrifice for the sanctuary to be trodden down underfoot? He's going to give a time frame. Read on.
Verse 14. And he said unto them, or he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
Now that's another prophecy that leads us, and what it's going to talk about is a time frame between when Antiochus came in and set up the abomination of desolation up to the time of Nicanor. Okay, so easily that time frame, what did it say? It said, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days. Well, divide that by 360. What do you get? So remember, we know that there's 30 days in a month, 12 months in a year. which gives you 360 days. Divide that by those numbers. What you get?
So we divided what? We divided 2. We divided
2,300 by 360.
360. We get 6.3.
Yeah, 6.3. So like 6 years and a month, something like that. Okay. So 6 years. That's important. So remember that. So he's letting you know 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Okay. So what it's going to let you know is why the Most High has things set up the way he does. So let's go back to Maccabees and let's get the time. When did did he actually come in and set up that abomination of desolation? Let's go back to Maccabees chapter 1 and let's read verse 44.
It's the book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 44. It says, "But the king had sent letters by the messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange law of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices."
I'm sorry, I don't want that. 54. I'm sorry.
Verse 54. "Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 140th and 5th year, they set up an abomination of desolation upon the altar and built idols all together throughout the cities of Judah on every side."
So you see that? So it's showing you. Now that's one thing that we have to understand, because that's a clue that Daniel broke down. Let's go back to, let's hold that. Remember that day. Remember that 6 years we just talked about, right?
Okay.
And we're going to come back to 54. I just want to solidify something. Let's go to Daniel 12. So he said, until the 2,300 days in the sanctuary shall be cleansed. But there's a little bit more to it. So he says, excuse me, Daniel 12, and let's read verse 11.
It's the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 11.
Mm-hmm.
"And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abominations that make desolate set up, there shall 1,290 days."
So now remember, what did we just read in 54 Maccabees? It said, and he set up the abomination of desolation, right? That lets you know, meaning that it went to the abomination of desolation that went so far wrong and wicked that's when Israel had to go. Israel had to flee, and this is what created the revolt. Okay, because the disrespect and the reproach got so strong. But read that again.
11. "And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abominations that make desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days."
Okay, so now from the time of the desolation set up, it said there shall be 1,290 days. So let's divide that time by 360. Now Daniel's going to give you the same calculation that we just read back in chapter 8.
3.5.
The last one we read, it was like a little over 6 years, right? 6.3, something like that, a little over 6 years. So it's giving you an estimation about 6 years. So it said, what you get on that?
3.5.
So 3.5, okay? 3 years and some change, okay? Now let's read the next verse. Verse 12.
Verse 12, it says, "Blessed is he that waited and cometh to the 1,395 in 30 days."
So now it's giving you a different one, but it's actually going to total it up to give you that same 6 year period. Okay, so now we just read that it was 3.5. Don't think that's 3.5. Remember, we're divided by days, so it's like 3 years and some months. Okay, or 3 years and some days. So now it gives you another count. It said, "Blessed is he that waiteth to the coming of the 1,305 and 30 days." So 1,335. Do that math. What you got?
3.7.
So you should get another 3 years and some change, right? So you have 2 days that give you 3 years and some days, and another one that gives you 3 years and some days, which totals what? 6 years and some days, right? So when you go back to, so now remember, let's go back to so now he's giving you the time frame. He said from the time the desolation set up And then blessed is he that waiteth on that time, gives you a time frame of 6 years and some days, right? So now when we go back to Daniel chapter 8, let's read 13 again.
Daniel chapter 8, verse 13. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint speak unto the certain saint, which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot?
So how long is all this going to be? Read.
And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
So now that's the one where we got 6 years and some time, right? Some 6 years and some days, right? So it's giving you the same 6-year calculation. But why is it giving us that? Because when we understand what's going to happen, then it's going to make more sense, because what he's showing you is that from when the abomination of desolation sets up to when Israel will receive some peace is going to be about 6 years. So let's go into the dates and get this. Let's get back in First Maccabees chapter 1 and let's read verse 54 again.
Book of First Maccabees chapter 1 verse 54. It says, now in the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year.
Now stop right there. In the what year?
145th year.
The 145th year. Okay, what happened?
They set up an abomination of desolation upon the altar.
That's right. So we just read, Daniel prophesied about that, right? He said that time frame, one time is going to be three years and some days. Then blessed is he that waiteth upon those next 3 years and some days. Then we read in chapter 8, he says it's 6 years from the time of the altar be thrown down up until Israel will have that accomplished. It'll be 6 years. So both accounts are showing you 6 years. So it says in the 145th year, the abomination, the desolation was set up, right? So now let's find out what happens and when did Israel find peace from their enemies? What year was it? Let's flip over to chapter 8.
First Maccabees chapter
7 and verse 1.
First Maccabees chapter 7 verse 1. In the 101 and 50th year, Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, departed from Rome and came up with a few men unto a city of the seacoast and reigned there.
Okay, so now we read that the abomination of desolation was set up in what year? 145, right? Now we see at this point is when Demetrius is coming up. What year is this?
The 151st year.
How many years is expired?
That's 6 years.
6 years exactly, right? As the prophecy said. But now what happens in this 151st years is 6 years after the abomination of desolation? What do we celebrate? Let's read verse 43.
Verse 40, First Maccabees chapter 7, verse 43. So the 13th day of the month Adar, the host of joint battle, but Nicanor's host was discomforted, and he himself was first slain in the battle. So
now you know the history. What did Nicanor do? He was just as bad as Antiochus.
He blasphemed our temple, kicked out the trees. He did all types of, put us in slavery, raped our women. He was doing all types of stuff.
He was a key factor and a key antagonist to Israel. Okay. He gathered his army. He killed many Israelites. But now with the Most High showing you, when we read in Daniel 8, he gave you a 6-year time span from when the altar will be torn down to where Israel will have that peace. Then in Daniel 12, it showed you 2 accounts of 3 years, where one is where the abomination of desolation was set up. But then what did he say? Blessed is he that waiteth until the other 3rd year. Because why is he showing you that? Because Israel's going to have to endure that to be able to receive this right here in that 6-year period. So it says, so he was discomfited first in battle. Read on, verse 44.
Verse 44. Now when Nicanor's host saw that he was slain, they cast away their weapons and fled. Then they pursued after them a day's journey from Adasa unto Gazara, sounding an alarm after them with the trumpets, whereupon they came forth out of all the towns of Judea round about and closed them in, so that they, turning back upon them that pursued them, were all slain with the sword, and not one of them left.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, they took their spoil and the prey and smote off Nicanor's head and his right hand, which he stretched out so proudly, and brought them away and hung them up towards Jerusalem.
Look at that. So cut his head off, his hand that he used to point and try to command orders. They cut that off, cut his head off and cut that arm off. Read on.
Verse 48. For this cause the people rejoiced greatly, and they kept that day a day of gladness. Moreover, they ordained to keep yearly this day, being the 13th day of the dark. Thus the land of Judah was in a rest for a little while.
See that? So now do you see what Daniel was showing? He clearly showing us that what he showed us from Babylon to the Persians and Medes to the Greeks, right? And then from the Greeks, Alexander would die, part his kingdom. Then out of them, a root would come up, Antiochus, who would take away the daily sacrifice. He took that away and set up the abomination of desolation in 145 BC. Then we read that it would take from the time of desolation to the time of Israel. That's why he said, blessed is he that waited on that other 3 years, because this is what they would receive. He said they had peace for a while. It didn't last forever, but they got peace. And this is where our memorial comes from. So we're able to see how Israel will be delivered from that affliction that the Greeks put upon us. Y'all see what's going on?
What's crazy about that, Elder, is like if we take away the Maccabees, there's no way we can substantiate any of those prophecies. We can't even.
And that's the point of why we got to make sure that we keep this intact.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So the Most High made sure that, remember, he said his word won't come back void. So he made sure that we found a way to get to it. You understand? But then you also see why they cut that history out. These are revolts. You see what I'm saying? But not only just revolts, but this is against, here it is, you have Jews, Negroes, and what have you, fighting against the world power, the Greeks at this time, and went and beating them. Do they teach this in any school?
Blah.
Why not? It's there.
For sure.
But why do they avoid that? You see what I'm saying? Don't get no ideas. This family, this Levite family called the Maccabees, that stood up and fought for the laws of the Most High, just like Mordecai did, just like Joseph did, just like Daniel did, and the three brothers that was thrown in the furnace during their captivities. So this is where the Most High is showing us how these kingdoms that come up and what they've done to us, and how we have to acknowledge these situations and also our triumphs. We fought against a world power. You can't just look over that like, oh yeah, we fought the Greeks. No, the Greeks, did we just read how they took over and became a strong nation? And they said the whole world was quiet before them?
Yeah, the whole entire earth, everywhere a bird is, they say they're gonna have rulership over.
And you had our people that was jumping ship, following them, excuse me, following them because they were afraid and conforming to the Greek ways. But then you had those that stood strong and said, nah, we ain't doing that. We're going to fight for the Most High and our laws. But we see also how the scriptures are showing us the prophecies of how these things unfolded. But it's not only that, it's even giving us time frames. Y'all see that?
And it lined up so perfectly. I don't know how you can deny this book. It lined up like line by line.
And that's why it's precept upon precept, because he's showing you how in Daniel 8, he breaks it down into 6 years. And then you have the days that's left over because it's approximations.
Yeah. And then
then Daniel 12, it breaks down 2 3-year periods from the abomination of desolation all the way up to blessed is he that waited on the other 3 years, because now you see what ended up happening. Because in the process of that, when you read the Maccabees, you're going to see people was losing faith. Because it's still, even though Israel was fighting, some, people still lost their lives. Remember, look at Judas and look at Simon. That's why we have Memorial of Simon. He lost all his brothers in war.
Yeah, they all died.
His father, he lost his brothers. So when you have these brave, valiant men being put to death, but they were fighting for the Most High, they were fighting for their people. So then some people got more invigorated and strong. Some people kind of lost faith and got weak. But that's why it said, blessed is he that waiteth on that. And now we can understand why and look at the victory that the Most High brought on Israel. So, you know, when we have our, you know, Day of Simon, you got to remember that, because Simon was one of the last brothers that fought and gathered Israel and led Israel to victory over their enemies. Georgius and Nicanor and all these other, you know, all these other crude individuals that fought against Israel and desecrated the Most High. You understand? You know, so you know, these are some things that you got to, you know, look at, and you can't, you know, you can't ignore it. And if you haven't read Maccabees, you got to read it.
Got to read it.
You have to. You have to. And what time is it?
10:34.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we can go more, but I mean, that's the meat of it. You know, you see in Daniel 7 talks about the kingdoms. You know, I didn't really want to get into Rome and all of that. We did that one. I mean, we could go into that another time, but
right.
Being that Simon is coming on, you know, really focus on that Greek history.
Right.
You know, focus on that, because a lot of the things like that we read about, like go to 2 Maccabees real quick. And let's read chapter 6 and verse 1. See, watch how the tactics that they were using.
Maccabees chapter 6 from the top.
Uh-huh.
It says, not long after the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of the Most High.
You see what they were doing? It said they compelled a dude from Athens. So where's Athens?
It's in Greece.
Exactly. So you see the Greek influence, the Hellenization? So they're showing you they compelled someone to go back to Jerusalem and compel them to depart from the laws too. So is that not the same thing that's happening now? Because who's teaching our people to depart from the laws? Isn't that these pastors and preachers?
Right.
Oh, we ain't got to follow the law. Even among the Israelite community, you got brothers teaching that.
Yeah, within our own community, which is crazy.
You know what I'm saying? So
Christ is the law, so we don't got to keep it no more. Oh,
man, think about this. Think about, I mean, let's use common sense. What did all of our forefathers fight for?
The laws of God.
What was Israel punished for?
The laws of breaking the laws of God.
So then if we're supposed to get out of bondage and get out of captivity and get back with the Most High, how are we going to push the law which got us in problems with the Most High? How are we going to disregard that?
Makes no sense.
You see what I'm saying? You got to be slow to get seduced by that. You see what I'm saying? It's like, man, come on. Seriously? Here it is. You know, you had the Maccabees fighting to keep the law. Look, if that was the case, why did the Most High call them wicked? It said, therefore, went wicked men out of Israel who compel others to do the way of the heathen.
Right.
The Most High said, that's a wicked man. That if you teach someone to go against the Bible or go against the Most High to teach them to do something at the heathen or another doctrine, that's wicked. But now you want to make it good. And we read all through the scriptures. What did he say? Return, backsliding Israel. Return unto the Lord. How do you return unto the Lord if you're not keeping the laws? That's what brought us to separation. That's what moved the Most High from us.
God.
You see what I'm saying? So it was the same exact thing. So you had people compelling them to do after the ways of the world or the heathen and not after the ways of the Most High. Even today. Read on.
Verse 2. And to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it a temple of Jupiter, Olympius, and Gazram of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place.
See that? So they started attributing astrology and planet names to the temple. You see what I'm saying?
We do that today.
Man, this is what was going on. Read on.
Verse 3, it says, the coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people.
Read on, yep.
For the temple was filled with riot and revelings by the Gentiles.
See that? This is Gentiles doing this. That's why Paul said, remember in times past, ye were Gentiles in the flesh, because they were doing this. Right. But when the Most High woke them up and they came to find truth, then they start to put off that way and repent and come back to the Most High. That's why that scripture we read earlier, in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves.
Right.
You see, read on.
For the temple was filled with bribes and revelings by the Gentiles who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuits of the holy place, and besides that, bought things that were not lawful.
Do you see that? So you had the priests that's supposed to be ministering; they was dealing with harlots in the temple.
Oh, that's crazy.
You see what I'm saying? And bringing that which was not lawful, bringing swine's flesh and shrimp and all kind of crap that the Most High holds abominable, but thinking that this was going to be something that is favorable. Nah. So that's why it says, learn not the way of the heathen. You see what I mean? Go ahead. Now watch this.
Verse 5, the altar also was filled with profane things, which the law forbidden.
Look at that. Read on.
Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or the ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew.
Do you see that? It was not lawful for you to keep the Sabbath or any of the holy days, or even to profess that you're a Jew. Now that's Psalms 83, right? Where it says, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. See, that's what happened. So this trick has always been against us all the time, since ancient Egypt up till now. The Greeks did a number because of their power and influence and their military. They were able to seduce and convince other nations to do that. And then our people fell on board and started to come back and seduce our own people. But this is what the Most High was showing us. So read this history, people. Don't let it slip. Read that. You gotta read it. And not just Maccabees. I mean, it gives you, even like when you read Bel and the Dragon about idolatry, history of Susanna. History of Susanna is when Daniel was a young boy. That book falls right before Daniel. And he had to, at a young age, had to show judgment. He had to speak on unjust or unlawful judgment against the innocent sister. He was young. He didn't hold his tongue, even against elders.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So if you look at that, and when you start to look at what the meaning of a lot of these books, like for example, Ezra, what is the key thing? Second Ezra says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Oh, that's powerful. They don't want you.
We no times right now, man.
Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it. Man, that right there lets you know who the so-called white man is. It says Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followed. Because when we read in Daniel, we read about the three beasts. We read about Babylon, Persia, Medes, Greece. What comes up after them? Rome. Who comes after Rome?
America.
Well,
America, the seven heads. Yeah. All the seven heads. You know what I'm saying?
And the next kingdom that's prophesied in Daniel after Rome is Christ.
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, yeah. Christ.
You know what I'm saying? So because it's letting you know America is a part of Rome. When Esau came into power, remember, the 7 heads and 10 horns are all the Edomite kingdoms that came and consolidated to rule the world. As Esau was prophesied. Remember, in Genesis, Esau was said, it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion.
And let me ask you this, Elder, is that twofold? Because a lot of people confuse that Revelation 20. I know you covered it before on the channel. You notice how you mentioned the next kingdom is Christ.
Yeah,
that happened before, right?
What you mean?
Like in the during that time with during the time when we were with Christ. Revelation 20, when we were kind of reigning for that 1,000-year period.
That's the Dark Ages,
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like more like with his name and his name being
right as Christians, because it says and ruled with Christ 1,000 years. We did that lesson too. Because remember, what was the chief religion for that 1,000 years? Christianity.
Christianity, yeah.
So
And that's
it
where
was
you get the
not to
wars
say that
about
they were following Christ, because if they were following Christ, there would be no need for the judgment. You see what I'm saying? But they ruled with Christ, meaning ruled in the element of Christianity, because of the Dark Ages, you know, which was known as the Holy Roman Empire. The doctrine was Christianity. See, you see what I'm saying? And that all happened so that the Bible can remain and get to us.
to keep it alive.
Yeah, remember the Romans in the time of Christ, they didn't allow, you were put to death for teaching the gospel. That's why Christ was afflicted. That's why the apostles and, you know, Stephen and you know, the apostles, John the Baptist, they were put to death because they professed. Look at John in Revelation. He was put on an island in prison for teaching the word of Christ.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until, you know, later on in the century, like the first, second century, to where then they started to take on the form of Christianity. And then that's where you had all these councils and they started to call themselves Christians and began to embrace Christianity as the religion of Rome at that time until this day. But now it just transitioned from Christianity to Catholicism. That's what Rome embraces now. That's where the Pope and all of that. But that's what that 1,000 years is talking about. Because if you look up how long did the Dark Ages last, I'm gonna tell you 1,000 years.
1,000 years, yeah.
And that was just the rulership of a lot of so-called Negroes that were going up under the name of Rome. So go back, you know, if those that need that, you can go back and check that lesson out. But
yeah, you gotta check that lesson out.
Remember, Christ hasn't claimed his kingdom yet. He said, if this were my kingdom, remember he said that to the apostles, he said, if this was my kingdom, then would my servants fight?
Right. Yeah.
So he said, this is not, he hasn't came, he's coming back to claim it. So, and some people think that scripture is talking about in the future, but it doesn't make sense because it says after they rule for 1,000 years, then the beast will be loosed again.
That'll make sense. Yeah, the kingdom is gonna be 1,000 years.
Now I said we will rule with Christ forever.
Forever.
And of the kingdom, there's no end.
Right.
So that's talking about an event that's already transpired, that already happened on that one. So yeah, if y'all need to see that video, just look up the 1,000 years. I believe that's the name of it. The 1,000 years.
Elder Raim, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, some 1,000 years, and we go into it and go into some good historical accounts as well.
Yeah, I gotta go back and watch that video. I didn't watch all of it. Gotta watch it again.
Yeah, check it out. But all right, Israel. Well, man, I hope you guys got edified. I hope you you know, go back, look over your notes. Always, you know, stay in the scriptures, keep studying. Keep studying, keep striving, keep thriving. You know, you're not growing, you're dying. Remember that.
All praises, man.
Yeah, all praises, brother.
All right, family, man. Shalom, man. Hopefully y'all took some good notes. Elder brought a lot of powerful information, prophecies, history, tying them together with the scriptures. I don't know how you could deny the Apocrypha after this lesson, you know, and we didn't even go into Feast of Dedication, which also is in there as well. But in the spirit of assignment, we wanted to bring out some history. Make sure y'all go back and read Daniel 8 and 9, man. I mean, 7 and 8. A lot of good history, and it talks about the times that we're going to be celebrating next week, most I permit. All right, family. Shalom, man. Blessings.
Shalom, Israel. Shalom, shalom. All right, brother.
All right.
All right.